Very good morning to you. You're welcome along to Monday morning's OTB AM. We're here with you all the way until 9:30 this morning, and we are picking over the carcass of one of the best and most interesting and most violent sporting weekends of the year. Eoin, how are you?
Very well.
Owen's got his papers very delicately placed there to hide the second piece of coffee that you spilled over yourself this month.
Yeah, it's turning into a bit of a habit. I'm starting to get a little bit worried about this.
Do you have is this like a bit of DTs after the weekend?
Well, maybe that's the reason, but certainly, yeah, there's half a cup of coffee currently on my jeans, which is good.
You did the rollover to watch the fight.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people did that thing where they try and find that lock-in, let's just say, although there's no such thing as lock-ins in this lovely city of ours, to try and watch the Conor McGregor fight. Failed miserably, ended up watching it on a phone on Camden Street at whatever time in the morning it was, so I'm sure your viewing experience of the Conor McGregor fight was better than mine.
Did people huddle around you like
yes.
that? Loads of people,
and
randomers.
And the guy was actually like, "You're too bloody short, let me hold the phone there," and to hold it up in front of other people. So yeah, there was a good, I would say, I want to say 7 or 8 of us watching it, just kind of a crew gathered outside a certain establishment that we expected to get into, but
you failed miserably.
You
got ejected from?
I got ejected from, yeah. There was a brief window of opportunity, and the bouncer not just told us where to go, but threw us out, literally.
You probably deserved it, in fairness.
Yeah, probably.
And that wasn't the only thing that happened over the weekend. Oh, look, these papers are actually wet now from your coffee as well. Great. So yeah, that obviously wasn't the football was pretty good. Aaron Ramsey scored one of the greatest goals, one of the greatest team goals you're ever going to see. Did you manage to catch the Arsenal?
I did. I watched it all. Yeah, it was obviously their best performance of the season. Like, we should note that the run that Arsenal have gone on to get to this point of whatever it is, 8 straight wins in all competitions, has been a very straightforward run of fixtures. That obviously, when you looked at the fixture list at the start of the season, there was those first 2 games of the season, City and Chelsea, whereby it was like, that's a horrible start to the season. But the run after that, the 6 games following that, are actually a beautiful run of fixtures, and you would not be surprised to see them win every single game. The thing is, though, that's just been a process where they've had to improve it week on week anyway, to the point where it's finally all come together just at the right time yesterday, that when a couple of tougher fixtures are coming up over the next few weeks, it seems that the Emery revolution has actually happened a lot quicker than Arsenal fans think. So, like, obviously, you mentioned the Ramsey goal yesterday. Is it already goal of the season? I don't know. Is it like, it's probably a bit too soon? Like that Seri goal from Fulham, I think in August, is probably the goal of the season so far. But this is certainly going to be one of the contenders.
We should talk about the fight, right?
Yeah.
And the fight that happened after the fight. I've been amazed at how much everybody's saying that this somehow is like really damaging to the UFC. And the UFC, oh, this is terrible. Do you remember Dana White was like, oh, this is terrible. After McGregor did the thing with the bus, it was like, God, this has gone too far. He's gone. Remember, there was like 4 of them in the room, or 3 of them in the room. I think Kevin Aioli was one of them. And there was about an hour long where he was just like trying to find out what had happened. And then they used the footage of that thing that was so awful to hype up this fight. They don't care about this. They don't care about what happened at all afterwards. It is exactly the type of thing that they want to turn Khabib into the next global superstar, and to potentially be able to roll this on. Like, it's exactly what promoters want. Promoters want promotion. They are just doing what Don King did, except on a like cruder level.
On a more Vince McMahon level.
Well,
I think
Vince McMahon probably would be much more conservative. Basically, they created this McGregor phenomenon, lost control of it, and are now profiting off the back of it. Like, it doesn't feel to me like this is something that UFC feels is a bad thing for the sport, really, because it's not a sport; it's a business.
Well, yeah,
it's not bad for business, is it?
Well, I agree that that's what they feel, but I think that some of that optimism is very, very misplaced. I think it's a good thing for the UFC, but it's a bad thing for the sport of MMA, that they will obviously ride the crest of a wave off this. There will be people who enjoy that sort of thing that we saw on Saturday night, that thought to themselves, well, this is crazy, this is amazing, this is absolutely, this is the sort of thing I want to watch now. It's like a soap opera, and I want to watch the next fight. Those people, I would say, are not real mixed martial arts fans. They are people who really aren't in this for the sport. They're in this for the drama, they're in this for the press conferences, they're in this because maybe they see a bit of themselves in someone like Conor McGregor. do the UFC therefore run the risk of actually alienating themselves from actual mixed martial arts
But they don't care about it.
fans? But they should probably care about it, because the people who are interested in this are the feeding fans, the fans that may not watch a single UFC bout once the Conor McGregor era is over, and that is a very dangerous line to walk from the UFC.
They're going to watch Khabib next. That's what happens. It's like you get sucked in, and I think it's just a gateway to other fighters. Like, ultimately, the business model is to create as much hype and bullshit as you can around, from the UFC's perspective. Like, and divorcing these two things, UFC are not the guardians of MMA. They don't care about the success or failure of MMA as a sport or as they just want to make money. And like it recently sold, it's exactly the same as the Glazers, right? It's exactly the same situation as Manchester United and the Glazers. What a lot of football fans still mistake is that the Glazers are not interested in anything other than how much money they're going to make off the club. And that's exactly what the new owners of UFC want. All they care about is making as much money as possible from ticket sales and pay-per-view, and ultimately it's pay-per-view, and keeping the price of the fighters down, so depressing the value of the fighters. So that whole kind of notion of the churn of fighters is really bad for the sport, because it means that fans don't build up a loyalty to them. Fans just want to go, the UFC fans just want to go and watch the fight and see what happens and be part of that. MMA fans, I suspect, are actually watching different promotions, like smaller ones. And,
sure.
And like, UFC is just a racket to make money.
Yeah, like, I mean, Dana White did say in the aftermath, he swore in his daughter's life that he didn't think once about the pay-per-view sales afterwards, that it wasn't on his mind right now. That bottom line that you talk about just wasn't a factor in his thinking, which...
I don't believe it.
Which was a big statement to make, indeed. Like the one thing that really stuck out to me in that post-fight press conference was the fact that he doubled down on the whole using the bus footage for the fight promotion, where he was like, he used the phrase, it was all part of the story. And this whole idea, and that's why I make the Vince McMahon comparison, the whole idea that it doesn't matter what the part of the story was, it's part of the story, it's drama, and the drama is just as important as the fight.
That stuff is scripted and they control it in WWE.
Well, yes, of course. It just has echoes of it, if you know what I mean. I'm not saying it's a direct comparison that it completely mirrors what they've done, but a lot of people have got they disagree heavily with the idea that this is sort of, that there are kind of echoes of MMA or of WWE about what happened in this whole Khabib build-up.
Do you remember Blind Boy talked about the comparison with Tupac and how Conor McGregor DM'd him saying, "Don't talk about me." Remember that happened?
Yeah.
Like, this is exactly, it had the exact bang of things getting out of control, the way the Biggie and Tupac thing got out of control because, it's all about selling records and it's just a bit of nonsense. But like, so what Khabib didn't understand was that this was just a bit of nonsense. He took it personally, and I suspect that this might not be finished, and that this has gone out of control, and that you're going to see something that ends up in a bad situation, a worse situation than what we've already seen.
Yeah, like,
and the UFC don't care. They do not care.
No, I'd agree with you. The thing is, and I know we're going to get into the papers and stuff in a moment, like the whole idea of the brawl afterwards, like, it is sort of a double standard to sort of blame McGregor too much for what actually happened there, considering Khabib did actually instigate that little brawl. But to like, I see people like comparing this to victim blaming, people who are actually calling out people who are saying that McGregor is responsible for all of this because of what he said. They're calling that victim blaming, which to call Conor McGregor a victim in all of this, or he's not. He doesn't really paint a picture of a victim. He literally said in the press conference he was going to murder Khabib Nurmagomedov. He said he would be in jail serving time for murder. Is that a victim?
No.
Probably not. No. So I think we should park that there for a second, because that's absolute bullshit.
You can see the footage from the side where McGregor actually gets up and hits one of...
Yeah, he swings first. But even then, I think it's a lunatic jumping out of a cage, which starts this whole thing, really. And it's Khabib's fault for what happened last night. The whole context around it, like, I mean, stoking political tensions between Chechnya and Dagestan, insulting his religion. It is just a fight game, they say, but the fight game just got real, I think, and we're about to find out just how real it is going to get.
Coming up, we're going to talk a little bit more about the specifics of the actual fight, because McGregor's reign as the power broker within the UFC may well be over, given how crushing the actual defeat was from Khabib's perspective. It seems like it was entirely one-sided. He did lose a round, and that's the first time that Khabib has lost a round in the UFC. What are the implications of that for that division, and does it mean that McGregor has a little chink that he can kind of use as a way to get back into the octagon? We'll talk about that a little bit later on. The rugby at the weekend, relatively routine victory for Leinster, but if you're a Munster fan, you're left ruing a bunch of refereeing decisions, which all seem to be very homerish, from not checking the grounding on the first try, from the yellow card for Keith Earls and the penalty try, from the deliberate knock-on from Sam Arnold, which wasn't a deliberate knock-on, which would have led to a breakaway try for Keith Earls, which ends up leading to a try in the corner for James Lowe, which is brilliantly finished. But before that, Tyke Burns seems to be on the ball just for long enough to win a penalty. Instead, it's a penalty to Leinster, and Leinster kick to the corner. It's like 5 compounding decisions, and it ends up an 8-point game. Well, all that has to happen is one of those decisions to go the other way, and that's not an 8-point game. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. And we'll bring in sports pages. Why don't we bring in sports pages right now, in fact?
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
It was my choice to stop Jesus taking the penalty, says Guardiola. So Riyad Mahrez takes a penalty from Manchester City in the 0-0 draw against Liverpool yesterday, skies it over the crossbar, and apparently Gabriel Jesus was supposed to be taking it, but Pep Guardiola said no.
Yeah, Pep reversed the decision, which I thought was interesting. And as you can see there, Guardiola's apologising for it. Like, he should be feeling a small bit apologetic about the idea that he took off Sergio Aguero, who of course probably would have buried the ball into the back of the net in that situation. Given the way the game had gone, like I can understand in any other sort of frantic sort of situation where City might be playing Liverpool, say in the context of last season, taking Sergio Aguero off, but taking him off in the context of the way that game was going yesterday, I'm not so sure about that, because there was always a likelihood that if the game was going to be won, it was going to be with a penalty or with a set piece or something like that. If it was going to be a penalty, you want Sergio Aguero standing over that ball. And given the kind of drab affair that it was to a certain extent, the slow pace, and Guardiola admits that was their game plan yesterday, I think Aguero would have managed to get a little bit closer to the 90 minutes than he did.
Munster facing further scrum half worries. Albie Mathewson is injured, got a knee injury while in the process of scoring a try. Again, even that was like, so I forgot about that. There were 4 scrums that were reset.
Yeah.
Each one of them could have been a penalty to Munster, and ultimately the referee is like, use it. I'm like, I'll use my monitor as a referee. You're not a coach here.
Yeah.
Okay, good call telling me to use it, because actually there's a big gap there. But it was just a weird refereeing performance.
It certainly was. Like, I was at the ground, so I haven't watched the whole thing back, and I'm sure it was like a big subject of discussion on commentary throughout. But yeah, it was really frustrating, that sequence of play. Mathewson, though, looks an absolute fantastic player. Like, obviously he's a former All Black, so naturally they knew what they were going to get.
Yeah,
and there,
good, though.
You start to get the sense that however long this Conor Murray absence is going to be, like, it's still very much clouded by uncertainty at the moment. Then Albie Mathewson is a very, very, very capable replacement. In fact, of all the fit scrum halves playing in the country right now, if we include Albie Mathewson in it, he's probably actually the best scrum half. He would easily be second choice in Ireland at the moment. And if he's missing now for the European weeks, that is a massive blow to Munster.
City let Reds off the hook. That's the same picture as Riyad Mahrez skies the ball over Allison's crossbar. So that's the story there. MMA is the Love Island of sport, says Eamon Sweeney, and Diaz now the right call for McGregor. Is that the right call for McGregor? A Diaz trilogy, or do you?
Well, I think at the point in that column, I'm not sure who's actually writing that piece. I had a look at it, and basically the idea is the right call is for him to not fight Khabib Nurmagomedov again, because clearly Khabib Nurmagomedov is a far superior fighter than Conor McGregor has ever been or ever will be, and will actually destroy him once again. That's actually the really disappointing thing about Saturday night for people who were on the Khabib train beforehand, is that he destroyed the moment where we might be having a conversation about, is he the greatest lightweight of all time that mixed martial arts has ever seen. We will be having that conversation this morning, and instead maybe the UFC are happy with the idea that we'll be having mostly a conversation about something very, very different.
Yeah, I mean, Khabib, yeah. So anyway, Eamon Sweeney has an interesting column. We might talk a little bit later about that. Chris Fields is going to come in and give us some analysis of the actual fight and what happened. And then obviously there is video knocking around from Was it a Derry club match this time? Where it was a Down club match, sorry. Apologies to all the Derry football fans. Of course, that never happens in Derry. And it had all the hallmarks actually of a big UFC fight in Vegas. It looked exactly people vaulting over into the crowd.
Maybe that's where the UFC picked it up from. Maybe Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov have just watched too many Ulster football matches.
Yeah, we can actually we can roll that in. And I mean, I suspect somebody's probably already done this on the internet, but overlaid it with the Run Our Tests commentary overlaid. Did you see that one doing the rounds?
Yeah, like I'm not sure if have they already dubbed the commentary onto this?
No, there's no commentary in this one. This was it's always I find women videoing the stuff that you're getting at the moment. Ballyholland and Downpatrick doing themselves proud here, and people falling to the ground and punches still being thrown when people are on the ground. That's what I can't really understand.
Yeah, it'll be over.
Yeah, it's
the laughter and the chatting away, and then it's like, oh no, this is serious. No, it's over now.
That's great, isn't it? As long as everyone's alright.
Yeah, I think at least we're not doing it on the hallowed turf of whatever that particular ground is.
Which should mean that it's criminal.
Oh my God.
Right?
Yeah, all of this should be criminal. Like I don't think anybody has a right to violently assault a fellow Gaelic Games player, but you know that's what happens with these things. We should like I'm sure like none of those people are actually enjoying that bit. Of course not. They definitely don't go looking for fights.
Famously, Ron Artest went into the crowd in a basketball match. I saw the Khabib footage overlaid with the Ron Artest commentary. It was pretty good.
Yeah,
it was like, hang on a second, what's this? And then you could hear the name Artest being mentioned. Like the
Cantona thing is also kind of comparable to what happened.
I mean, I thought Cantona, you know, like the guy was racially abusing him. Like he went to defend himself. He shouldn't have. Fair enough. But like, it was one guy who got what he deserved, really.
Yeah.
I don't know. And so, what do we think is alleged to have been said that so enraged Khabib after the fight, during the fight, or was that like premeditated?
It's hard. It's something was clearly said during the fight. That's what Ariel Helwani's reported. That's what I think Dana White is on the record as saying that as well. So there's a number of things stacking this up.
Good job hearing exactly what one person says and the 21,000 people who are at the fight.
It is odd, and how he manages within the sort of confines of the white heat of battle to actually find Dylan Dennis and his face and saying the exact things that he's saying to him, that it could be preordained. I'm sure that the sort of rigour with which he kind of like went towards him was preordained, but the actual spark
of him landing the 2 feet down, like kind of it's the iconic UFC photograph, I suspect, from now on. Enthralling, and Abel joins the Arc Greats as she holds the turbocharged challenge of Sea of Class in an epic finish of the Phillies. So the Predal Arc and Abel is the my 2-time winner there, and then the picture of Riyad Mahrez skying his penalty over the crossbar. So there you go.
Back page of the Herald this morning is Rogers' no to Villa job. Celtic boss dismisses talk of Parkhead exit, but claims Villains are a huge club.
I would take him.
Would you, yeah?
Yeah.
Over Roy, over Henry, over Mick McCarthy?
Yeah, I think he's absolutely, yeah.
Speaking of Roy, Arta says the Roy row is over. He was speaking after the Cardiff match at the weekend. And Kenny stays quiet on Dublin Hurley job. Matty Kenny not saying one way or the other whether or not he's going to take up the mantle with Dublin. Cool, of course, knocked out at the Dublin Hurling Championship at the weekend. Back page of the Irish Daily Star this morning is Sin City 1 and Sin City 2. Sin City 1 is Conor McGregor, Ronan O'Flaherty writing from Vegas, Kieran Cunningham saying this steaming pile of manure stank and the smell will linger. While Sin City 2, Guardiola begs Jesus for forgiveness after Mahrez missed penalty howler. Back page of the Irish Daily Mail this morning is Pep says sorry. Jesus wanted to take spot kick, admits Guardiola, and Van Gran buoyed by world-class Carberry. Back page of the Sun then this morning is Ma Rose, but Rose Ed, and it's the fight game. Shit happens, it says the UFC Chaos in Vegas story. Back page of the Mirror this morning. You've also got a story there, by the way, on the back page of the Sun that Bale is going to miss out for the Ireland game. So chances are we're not going to have to worry about Christian Eriksen. We're not going to have to worry about Gareth Bale. All we got to worry about is ourselves and getting 6 points in this Nations League doubleheader, and it's on. We're back.
What if we get 6 points?
Well, you know, the Nations League matters. once again to most people, because it has been written off now that we've kind of got off to a very, very bad start, that it's like, oh well, this thing doesn't actually matter. It is of quite high importance.
I mean, the track record over the last 2 qualifying campaigns suggests that when we have managed to back ourselves into the most horrific looking corner, like a rat, we suddenly fight our way out.
Yeah.
What if we do that?
Well, I'm just trying
Does that
to
restore the credibility of the management team? Harry Hart is back, plays a meaningful role, plays well.
I'm just trying to think, what are those situations where we've managed to fight our way out? Are you talking about like Shane Long winning against Germany like that? We were at a fairly low ebb before that. Other than that, what are the instances with which we've actually done that?
The Wales game. We had to win that game in Wales.
Oh, we had to, yeah, but I wouldn't say that things were anywhere near as low as
we were out of the qualify. We needed to basically win out at that point to qualify.
Yeah, we did, but it wasn't like we'd come off the back of a 4-1 hammering in our last competitive game or anything.
Let's watch what Harry Arter had to say. He's speaking with Dave McIntyre in the immediate aftermath of the Cardiff game at the weekend. Here he is.
You guys heard through different sources what happened. I decided to stay silent, and as I say, it was between me and Roy, and we've patched it up now, and everything's back to how it should be between a manager and a player and a coach. And as I say, for me, what's happened in a camp stays in a camp. I'm not someone that will tell you guys, not horribly, but I won't tell you guys what happened. It's just between 2 grown men, and it's all sorted now. Unless
one of your mates, your teammates, tells somebody else on a WhatsApp message and it goes viral.
Yeah, is that it done now? Is that it parked? The hatchet buried?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, all I need now is to convince Declan Rice to come back.
I would say I've gone on a journey once again where I'm like, yes, he's coming back, to no, he's not coming back, to
maybe there's a chance.
Somewhere in the middle. The liking of the tweet means I'm somewhere in the middle right now.
Didn't he unlike it?
Did he unlike it?
He did, yeah.
Oh, well, in that case, I'm off the train again. No, you're right all along. He's definitely going to choose England.
I'm sure he unliked it.
Back page of the Mirror is sore point, and Khabib may be stripped of the UFC belt. He has to be stripped of the belt, right?
No! He does not have to be stripped of the belt.
What's the correct thing to do? Strip him of the belt.
Okay, actually, you were 100% right, and so...
But he's not going to be stripped of
the
belt.
No, hang on. It makes perfect sense to strip him of the belt, right? So you strip him of the belt, you give him a 6-month hiatus. In the meantime, 2 other people have to fight for the right to fight him for the belt. So you put the interim belt back. And who can fight for the interim belt?
It's McGregor against Ferguson.
Exactly. And so that's a big fight. And the winner of that automatically gets Khabib. And Khabib comes back and it's like... And they use the footage of him jumping into the crowd to sell the fight. And it's like boom, 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 boom. And this thing grows and grows and grows. And everybody's a winner.
The problem is...
Except the sucker's paying $100 for the pay-per-view.
Conor McGregor loses to Tony Ferguson, though. And you've got Ferguson against Khabib. They need to...
That's exactly what they want, though, isn't it?
They want McGregor involved. They want him involved again, and then again very quickly after that. And of course, he's got all those fights in his contract. He'll then go and fight Pettis or someone like that.
Well, so you can fight Ferguson, and if he loses that, then finish off with your Diaz as your final one, and happy days. So that was the last one on BT Sport, by the way. That was the last, as far as I know, that was the last McGregor fight on BT Sport. It's going to be 11 Sport from now on, which means that's your last. If you're an Air Sport or BT Sport subscriber, that's the last time you're going to be able to get that for free.
Yeah, it's annoying, isn't it? Back page of The Guardian is Sky High Mahrez. Guardiola takes blame for penalty miss in Anfield draw. And then finally, the front page of the Daily Telegraph sports section is Mahrez pays the penalty. City's £60 million winger misses crucial spot kick at Anfield.
We haven't even mentioned the fact that Newcastle were standing there over the bloodied corpse of Jose Mourinho, bragging about how they had brought him down, how they got their first win of the season at Old Trafford, and they neglected to finish the actual match on top. A 2-0 win suddenly becomes a 3-2 defeat. A stoppage time winner for Alexis Sanchez. A second half performance from Paul Pogba for the ages. And Jose Mourinho is back up and running, and he's not dead yet. Not dead yet.
It had Fergie written all over it, and it included one of the worst refereeing decisions in this season's Premier League with the handball that from that free kick from John Joe Shelby, which bounced off Ashley Young's arm, goes out over the end line, and the referee doesn't only neglect to give a penalty, he gives a goal kick to Manchester United just to rub the salts in the wounds, and as a result of literally just not looking at where the ball was travelling. So Newcastle United should have been 3-0 up, and that would have been it, done, game over. But afterwards you had this very pointed moment where someone from the Manchester United hierarchy hugs Jose Mourinho in the tunnel, and everything is rosy in the garden once more. And people are actually suggesting that Jose Mourinho is going to change his ways because he had to attack in that second half, and they got all 3 points. Jose Mourinho is not going to change his ways. It's just a matter of delaying the inevitable.
Go down swinging if you're Mourinho. You're going down anyway, so why not go down swinging?
We do forget that Newcastle are terrible.
Daniel Harris is going to talk to us about that in just a couple of minutes' time. First, though, Brian Kerr was on commentary duty alongside Nathan yesterday for the 0-0 draw between Liverpool and Manchester City. Here is their post-match thoughts.
I mean, I know as a coach, formerly manager, if you lost to a team by 2 or 3 goals, or they scored 3 goals against you, or in Liverpool's case, they scored 5 against you one time, you would be very conscious in the week's preparation. Not that Liverpool or Manchester City had an awful lot of time for preparation this week. There was a lot of tactical detail implemented and practiced, I think, in advance by both teams to stop the opposition's main attacking threats. In Liverpool's case, it's the early ball from midfield to release Mo Salah or Sané, usually a diagonal ball from the left-hand side towards Salah running in the right. Today, Mendy was on his toes. He was giving cover all the time to centre halves, and they stopped that happening. In Manchester City's case, the threat from the football of, say, Aguero, the interchange of passing with Silva, Bernardo Silva, the pace of Sterling. What Liverpool did to stop that was that they were very tight to them in midfield. They were quick getting around, they had a good solid shape, and they harassed and harried them, particularly the full backs. I thought Gomez was very good, and Robertson. So that meant that neither team were able to produce their best in the attacking positions, and the best players on both teams were the defensive players.
0-0 draw there. The two lads giving us their thoughts, Brian Kerr and Nathan, talking about the 0-0 draw between Liverpool and Manchester City. A reminder, OTBAM is live with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. Let's go to the Manchester United game, though, because it did look like the end of the Jose Mourinho era was upon us. And then, lo and behold, a beautiful second half comeback, the crowd chanting Mourinho's name, and maybe, just maybe, this is a Mark Robbins moment. Is it potentially, Daniel Harris, a Mark Robbins moment?
It's possible, but probably not, I don't suppose. I think the problem for Mourinho is, number one, there's an international break that's going to interrupt his momentum, your team's momentum, and also the games that are coming up are now difficult. So really, that game should have been a lesson for Mourinho, except obviously we know that Mourinho's not big into lessons, but in that you've got attacking players, you've got defence that isn't that good. The way to play is to attack. To play Matic and McTominay at home to Newcastle was absolutely ludicrous and completely unnecessary. And United started without any impetus, and then the defence defended badly. They were panicked, which is itself kind of strange in that it's not a great defence. No one thought it was a great defence, but it conceded a lot fewer goals last season and defended with a lot more confidence. And I don't know how much of that is to do with the fact that Mourinho has undermined the confidence and Woodward has undermined the confidence by saying that reinforcements were needed by not permitting reinforcements, but it shouldn't be conceding 2 goals at home to Newcastle in the first 10 minutes or whatever it was, under any circumstances. But the way that United fought back was excellent, and in the end, as a football manager, if you're not sure who to pick, and we know that Mourinho isn't sure who to pick because he changes who he picks from game to game and within games, then think about what your opponent doesn't want to face. And if you're a manager whose team's about to play Manchester United, you're not thinking, gosh, I hope he doesn't play Matic and McTominay, because that's exactly what you want him to do. You're looking at the squad thinking, gosh, there's a lot of attacking talent there. I hope he picks as few of those players as possible. And what happened was that he ended up with a situation where he had all the best attackers on the pitch, and United scored goals. And it's not that difficult. Football is a simple game.
There was a lot of analysis done of Jose Mourinho's post-match comments as well on Saturday, talking about McTominay and talking about Rashford, saying they were sad and saying they were a little bit scared and things like that. For a man who plays the media game so well down through the years, why does Jose Mourinho continue to do things like that in the aftermath of what could be, according to some Manchester United fans, a season-turning moment for Jose Mourinho?
It's possible that he's kind of tone deaf in the way that people work. So he didn't excoriate Rashford and McTominay by saying these guys are rubbish. He used them to make a point about the way that people overreact and talk about the game, which isn't to say that I think he said the right thing. I don't. No sportsman ever wants to be called scared by anyone, never mind by their august manager and in public. but it wasn't a vicious attack in the way that he sometimes can go. So I think perhaps he just misjudged what he said. And that's not a defence I would ordinarily provide for Mourinho, but I do think it's possible in these circumstances. That said, it's a bit rich for him to say that McTominay was scared when of the 7 billion people in the world, there's literally one who thinks that Scott McTominay should be anywhere near starting for United, and that's Mourinho. So a criticism of McTominay is really a criticism of Mourinho, just in the same way that when Mourinho voted for McTominay for Manager's Player of the Year, that was the closest he could get to voting to himself. Voting for himself, even.
I want to play you this audio because this is the post-match. This is the manhunt. Apparently there's never been a manhunt in history like this, not even the one for Dr. Richard Kimball. Have a look.
You know, I am 55 years old, and in spite of it is the first time that I see in football a manhunting. I am 55, I am mature, I can cope with it, and I can live with it. I think clearly some of the boys, in spite of they are not the man that is hunted, I think that they are not coping well with it. And the way they start the game was absolutely panicking. Every ball that was in our box, I thought even in some moments we could even score in our own goal. And it's not easy. It's not easy for them. You know, as a friend of mine was saying to me this morning, if tomorrow rains in London, it's my fault. You know, I go to London tonight. If tomorrow rains in London, it's my fault. You know, if there is some difficulty to have the agreement of the Brexit, it's my fault. And I have to be ready for all of this.
It's madness, really. Look, I'm being facetious when I'm comparing this to Mark Robbins because I really don't feel like there's any possibility he can rescue the situation from now. It would be one of the greatest turnarounds in sports history, and not like just from where he's coming from, but it would be such a sea change for Mourinho to recognise the issues that he has as a manager and how football has changed since he was last successful as a manager.
Sort of. I'm not sure how much football has changed in that, I've said this before probably on here, that if he had his Chelsea side now, the side from 04 to 06, they would have a pretty good chance of winning this league. He just doesn't have the players to implement the way that he would like to play, and he doesn't seem to have the wherewithal to speak to different types of character to those that he had at Chelsea. I don't think it's so much that football has changed, but I mean that whole spiel that we heard just there is there are elements of truth in the way that Mourinho is brought to book more readily and with greater alacrity and more frequently than those who are nicer to newspaper reporters like Pochettino and Klopp, like the press conferences where the press feel valued and spoken to nicely and all of that kind of bollocks that isn't really part of a manager's job, even though elements of the press seem to think that it is. However, if Mourinho was perfect or close to perfect or even doing the bare minimum, no one would be saying any of this stuff. And so to bang on about it, just when you've beaten a crap team 3-2 and only just beaten them with a last-minute header is rich and not necessary. If you want to have a go at the press for having a go at you when you don't deserve to have a go at you, do it after you've won the league or won a cup or something. And even then, I guess it would be quite mean-spirited, but at least morally, you would have some kind of reason to do so. But for him to bang on about it at this point when there's still so much work to do and the focus really should be on the players, it doesn't scream a man who has realised the difference between what he's been doing and what he needs to do in order to have more success. And that's what would come back to what I said earlier. You've got a massively top-heavy squad with loads of good attackers, and the way to protect a dodgy defence is not to rely on the defence by sitting deep and putting men in front of it. It's to rely on the attack. And we saw a good example of that yesterday with Arsenal. OK, they were playing Fulham, and Fulham can't defend. But Arsenal's defence yesterday was Holding, Bellerin, Monreal and Mustafi, and with Leno behind them. That back five is not any better than United's back five. And it might be worse, even because David De Gea doesn't happen to be in goal for Arsenal. But Arsenal are committing to attack. And by committing to attack, they're playing with confidence, they're scoring great goals, and they're not conceding as many times as United because the opposition is too busy thinking about how they're going to stop Arsenal. And if the ball's in the other half, then you're much less likely to score a goal. And provided you concentrate, then in the transition, you're still less likely to concede a goal.
I would argue that's how football has changed since he won the Champions League with Inter, that there has been a rebalancing in favour of the attacking team. Some relatively small rule changes, but also just we're in a cycle at the moment where the best teams have committed to attack, I think as a response to Guardiola's Barcelona being successful. And there are now so many brilliant athletes, there's a much better scouting system all around the world, and that the best young kids are being brought through and taught that they want to be attackers. It just feels a little bit like his desire to be defensively solid has been usurped somewhat, or has been outstripped by the other good teams. There are a proliferation of good teams now who can attack, and so the point you made about his Chelsea team, that probably does hold because the quality of the players they had, particularly the attacking players, were so brilliant. I don't know if Mourinho today would identify those players and go, I want them in my team, because he'd be so busy trying to buy the best defensive players or to fix the defence.
Well, he's actually at United. He's brought a lot of attack, like the big money that he spends been on attackers, and he gets a lot of stick for buying Bailly and Lindelof, who are neither of whom are playing well at the moment. But really, like, those two were punts. If you spend 30 million quid on the defender, and I am aware of how ludicrous this is about to sound, you're far from certain that those guys are going to be a success. So he hasn't actually spent humongous money on defenders, though he would now like to. And I think that whether the game changing, these things are cyclical. So if he had the squad that he had at Inter, I think that they were able to frustrate Guardiola's Barcelona over to, 2 goals over 2 legs. I think they'd have a pretty good chance of frustrating any team now, and that's to do with the kind of personalities that they had, people who were mentally tough, who didn't want to be beaten, and also the way that he organised them. And that is what's particularly troubling about the way his United team defend, is there's a lack of organisation that makes you wonder what they do in training. They concede goals from set pieces, and worse and more than that, they look liable to concede goals from almost every set piece they face. And that's not a Mourinho defence, and that's partly to do with probably a lack of on-field leadership and some mental weakness in the players that he has. And I don't think that is harsh to talk about his players in that way, because we've been watching them for quite some time, these lads, and they are mentally weak, and you can see it by the way that they concede goals, the way that they concede a goal and then they look like they might concede another goal immediately afterwards. But Mourinho isn't doing enough with them to get the most out of them. And given that was his strength, that is something that's troubling. And in terms of the attack, it is true that other teams seem to know more about where they're going to be. Like, you know how they play, but I don't know how much that's to do with the systems that they devise and rehearse in training, probably quite a lot, but also just to do with continuity. Mourinho changes the team all the time, and you're not getting any continuity when you do that. And so now what we see a player, Anthony Martial, got fouled for the free kick that Mata scored from on Saturday. He scored a great goal, and so he probably will start the next game against Chelsea. The problem is that if he has a bad half, he'll probably get hooked at half-time. Yeah. Lukaku, for example, hasn't played well for quite some time. He plays all the games, and he plays 90 minutes all the time. On Saturday, Rashford missed a couple of good chances, but he was the person that was getting into the position to miss the chances, and yet it was him that got hooked, because there are certain players that Mourinho likes, and it's a case of, it looks like it's confirmation bias, really, so that those players get lots and lots of scope to play badly, and other players don't, and that means that they're not going to play with confidence, but it also means that you have no continuity to build partnerships in the team, so partnerships down the flanks, partnerships through the middle, so Rashford and Lingard, for example, play together a lot. They have a great partnership. They understand each other's movement, but you very rarely see them use that for United, because Rashford only has to play badly for 10 minutes, and then we don't see him for a bit longer. Martial and Luke Shaw, if you're a defender down the right side, that is not something you should relish facing. But we don't see them play together very often because Martial gets dropped all the time. And that's the main problem with United, I think, that going forward, it's not so much what is the correct personnel, although that's also part of it, and Mourinho hasn't cracked it. It's that he needs to decide on some personnel and a formation, and then allow it to play and be brave enough to let it continue, even on the occasions that it doesn't work, because these things tend not to happen by magic and happen very quickly. They tend to take time, and they tend to take a lot of hard work in order to work in the way that you want them to.
The irony is we're having this conversation about Jose Mourinho being too conservative if you compare him to Pep Guardiola the morning after perhaps the most conservative setup that we've seen from Pep Guardiola in the Premier League. Of course, it was done in the wake of what Liverpool did to Manchester City on a couple of occasions last season, and I think yesterday kind of summed up the difference between Jose Mourinho and Pep Guardiola in a way that Jose Mourinho can be very stubborn in his ways, and even if we park how attractive the football might be, I don't think there's any question that Pep Guardiola can take on board a little more lessons, and he spoke about it in the aftermath of yesterday, making that extra pass, trying to stop that counter-attack from ever materialising. And I guess that's, you've got to take your cap off to Pep Guardiola for learning from, I guess, some of the mistakes he made last season.
Yeah, because I think the thing with Liverpool is Liverpool are theoretically a really easy side to stop because they only have one way of playing. So they play really fast and they play with fast counters. And if you're able to stop that, and we saw Mourinho did it last season, then they don't have very much. And I thought that what we saw yesterday actually was it was really obvious why Klopp wanted to sign Fekir, because he doesn't have any craft in his team. So in midfield, a midfield of Wijnaldum, Henderson and Milner. And if we're talking about Mourinho again, that is in its way a real insult to the way what Mourinho has done, that Liverpool are able to play good football with that midfield. It tells you that you don't need to have the best, most clever, exciting players in every position in order to be able to make football exciting. But it does mean that Liverpool only really have one speed, that very fast speed, and City were able to stop that. And I think that City, even if you forget about the missed penalty, City really should see that as a missed opportunity, because Liverpool didn't play well yesterday and they were there for the taking, and City actually weren't able to do it. I think the thing about Guardiola, what you say is about the way he had to set up to stop Liverpool, is partly because Guardiola's defending isn't really done or isn't really exemplified by the back four. He doesn't have a particularly good back four. He doesn't have a particularly reliable back four. But what he does is the teams defend from the front. They pressure you on the ball, and they stop you getting anywhere near the back four. And so he has to be able to do that, to stop you getting near the back four with pressure and with numbers, because if the team are able to get his back four individually and one-on-one, it's not a great defence, and it's never going to be a great defence with those people in it. So yeah, he did a pretty good job, and I think the way that I would be looking at it if I was a City fan or Pep Guardiola, or looking at it as someone who's impartial when it comes to those two teams who I dislike with equal fervency, is that City are just a better team than Liverpool. I can't see any way that this Liverpool team are going to be able to match this City team over 38 games because they only have that one way of playing, but also because City just have better players. If you look at who are the best players in the Premier League, who are the generational players who you're going to talk about as being the best players in the Premier League over a 5-10 year period, City have several of them. They have De Bruyne, they have Silva, they have Aguero, they have Bernardo Silva, who might become that, and Liverpool have none of them. And I don't think they have any players that are going to become any of those players. So it's really hard to see how they will be able to live with City over 38 games. But the way Liverpool will see it is they got a point against the team they think are going to be their biggest rivals, and they have enough firepower to beat most of the other teams twice. So I can see why Liverpool would see it like that, but as far as I can see it, City are several classes above the rest of the competition, and by Christmas they'll be several points clear because of that.
That's crazy. I was just going to ask you if you thought Mo Salah was a generational talent. It's clearly a resounding no, Daniel.
He might turn out to be one, but he isn't yet. And I didn't like. He had an incredible season last season. I'm not going to call him the Egyptian Kevin Phillips.
You are. You just did. You just did.
No. I'm joking. He's obviously better than that. Not to say that Kevin Phillips wasn't an instinctive, excellent finisher, but he is better than that. But he doesn't. To me, I haven't seen enough from him to say that he's someone who I think is going to be able to repeat the season that he had last season. And so far, we haven't seen it. He is a good player. He's got phenomenal pace, and he's always a goal threat. But he doesn't seem to have, to me, like the variety in his game to be able to run past players. And I think the thing with him last season was that he scored a lot of tap-ins, but he also scored a lot of pretty high tariff finishes.
Yeah.
And for him to be able to do that again, you're not just talking about generational talent, you're talking about an all-time talent. And I don't see that. But again, like I haven't seen much of him prior to last season, and I hadn't seen that ability there. But it's just generally when players you don't expect to have that kind of season suddenly have that kind of season, it doesn't mean that they're not the player you thought they were. It just means that they're at the absolute zenith of their game and everything's going for them. But I might be wrong, but we need to see a lot more from him before we start talking about him the same way we talk about David Silva and Sergio Aguero and even Kevin De Bruyne, players who've been brilliant over a stretch of time and at all levels.
We'll leave it there for today. Daniel, great stuff. Thanks very much.
No, see you again, chat. Bye.
Daniel Harris giving us some thoughts this Monday morning about all of the weekend's football. We'll get to the rest of your comments about the football in a couple of minutes' time, but we're turning our attention now to UFC and the events at the weekend. Obviously, Andy Lee was part of our Saturday panel discussion talking about the difficulty that Conor McGregor might have with motivation after having reached the level of success and fame and celebrity and wealth that he's had. Andy made a few particularly salient points about how difficult it might be to keep up that level of motivation, particularly when you're fighting somebody like Khabib in the Octagon. Have a look.
You won't know, until the bell rings and he's in there and it's getting tough. That's when you'll find out how much you want it.
Yeah.
Because up to this point, it's still the same, the buzz that he's always had, and it's always been a good outcome. But he'll know when he's in there. Like he came back from the Diaz fight. Obviously, he's shown then he probably had enough money then to retire before that loss.
Yeah.
And he showed then that he had this heart and desire to come back and win the rematch. And since then he's won fights, and now he's fought Mayweather. Now he's come back to fight the toughest challenge out there. So you have to say on the evidence that's there, he has the desire. He's not taking an easy route. He's not like living off his name and taking so.
And the money, as you say,
he'll only find out when he's in there and it's tough and he's it's late in the rounds and it's getting hard.
You have to make a call.
Yeah.
So as you can see there, Chris Fields was part of that panel on Saturday. He's with us again. How are you?
All good.
We can talk about the money in a couple of minutes' time. Before we get to the breakdown of the fight, because actually that is something that I haven't heard covered that much since, right? My take on the UFC is that they've encouraged all this mayhem, and they have to bear responsibility for encouraging the mayhem, and that actually, I don't believe a word Dana White says when he's like, "Oh, I'm not even angry, I'm disappointed." Like, come on.
Yeah, I think when you when they use the stuff from the bus incident in the build up to the fight, they've kind of stoked the fire a bit. I think if there was a rematch, I wouldn't be surprised if they used the footage from that fight. I think it's gone a bit of a nasty route. I'd say it'd be hard pushed to find any fight promotion, whether it was boxing or K1 or anything, that wouldn't do the same, because it's going to make the most money. But I don't think that's always the aim. What people need to understand here is that the UFC is a promotion, not a sport. So their interest is to make the most money they can.
Especially after they sold for billions.
Yes, and they're sold to an entertainment company, which doesn't bode well for the sporting aspect of it. Obviously, they have the best athletes and they're going to have the best fights in the Octagon, but this kind of stuff is just, as it were, a skid mark in the underpants of MMA.
Yeah, I think the big loser from the weekend was the MMA fan who were into the sport before Conor McGregor took to the UFC, before it exploded into the mainstream like the sport had never seen before, because it became this marriage between an organisation and a sport for a lot of passing fans that was inseparable. And now, to a certain extent, whether you like it or not, the UFC is responsible for the image of mixed martial arts. And of course, after what we saw on Saturday night, they're not exactly controlling that image in a great way.
No, not at all. This is the reality of the situation. I watched that fight. I went to bed. I got up and I got one of my fighters and drove up to we drove up to Antrim, and he was competing at an amateur level, and you go up, there's 500 people in a room. This guy's trained his ass off, got everything ready, no crap, as it were, didn't do anything wrong, went in and fought, and you see the sport at its beautiful best, and guys smashing up buses or jumping out of cages is not that, really. I'm not going to sit here and defend it. You can't defend it. It's wrong.
It was such a great card as well up until that point. Even without the main event, it would have been probably, some people would have been saying it was one of the best UFC cards we've ever seen, even if you take away.
Which is the problem, because everyone was watching so you had the highest numbers, the highest viewership probably ever for a UFC, and then that goes on. So you'd be right and I would have thought the same, that the UFC haven't exactly nipped this kind of behaviour in the bud. They've
encouraged it. Yeah, they have encouraged it.
Yeah, they have. It made more money for them.
Really, they're pretending they don't, but we'll actually ultimately. So always talking about the casual fan who substitutes UFC for MMA and makes no effort to never do it. It's like it's the same thing in their heads. Like the next time it's mentioned that Khabib is fighting, or the next time it's mentioned that McGregor is fighting, those people are still going to be like, "Ooh, I want to see what happens now after the fight in the crowd. Who was the guy in the crowd? Can they get him involved?" It's like it spirals to this point where they do lose control. I think, like the Khabib camp had the guy who sucker punched McGregor, bragging on social media afterwards.
I saw that.
Yeah,
he's
There's
been.
the picture of Khabib. Would you stick the picture back up there?
He's been fired. That guy. He's been had all the guys from his team that were in the UFC.
That's
this guy, knuckle dragger.
Kareem Zidane is the journalist who's translating that, saying that I slapped him as promised. I promised to make him answer, and so he's been fired by Khabib.
By the UFC.
By the UFC.
By the UFC. He's a UFC fighter. So him and the other guy that jumped in. I think it was three in total. Three of them were fired by the UFC, which is good. But we'll see how they treat Khabib after this. You know, I don't like they've put it on the commission, because realistically, this is where, for me, the UFC needs to step up, and like he needs to be banned for a while. You know, if that was football, like the FA in England would ban the player. You know, kind of. So the UFC. They shouldn't be relying on the Nevada State Commission to do it. It should be the UFC saying, even if the commission clear him, we're not going to let him fight. Yeah. You know, that would be my view.
And the thing is, though, that even unless they ban him for like a 2-year period, which clearly won't happen, because he's now their cash cow.
He's their new money maker. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about why he's their money maker, because he was absolutely dominant in that fight.
Yeah.
It was, from the McGregor camp, it was pretty much textbook how they wanted it not to go.
Yeah. Actually, if you watch the first couple of exchanges, Conor did quite well defending the wrestling. He did really well defending the single leg. One little mishap with he was stuffing the head to the outside, bringing Khabib's hips up, so it makes it really difficult. And Conor, being quite athletic and flexible, was kind of bending in weird contortionate ways to stay up. Did really well for like a 40-second period of him trying to bully him to the mat at the very first takedown. And then Khabib happened to get a hold of Conor's far ankle, which kind of led to the downfall. And I think a couple of the things I spoke about that I wouldn't have liked to see Conor do, he did. As in, he accepted putting his back on the mat a couple of times instead of scrambling back to the feet. I remember at the time you were saying Joe Duffy had said to you he was best off, or he thought he was best off kind of relaxing in these bad situations. And I was saying I thought that was a bad idea, because Khabib's style, he'll pressure pass. And that's what he did. Conor opted for what we call butterfly. It's both your feet under the guy so you can elevate him. But to do it, you have to put your shoulders on the mat. That's always bad with someone like Khabib. He's so heavy on top. And then you're carrying that guy for a round or two, which is exhausting, obviously. Yeah. So all his weight is bearing down on you. So as the fight went on, the other thing to take from the fight is Conor's the first guy to ever take a round off Khabib in his career. He won the third round. A small moral victory in itself, but that's the first time Khabib has ever lost a round in his career.
And is that Khabib taking a rest? Is that like an opportunity for the McGregor camp to say, hang on a second now, if we plot this properly and plan out everything, there's a way for us to get back into a fight with Khabib at some point in the future?
Yeah, I think like the third round, the Conor detractors would say it was Khabib taking a round off. I didn't think so at all. I think it was, if Conor's fitness had been probably a little bit better, and he hadn't have maybe assumed those positions earlier on where Khabib was able to get a lot of weight and pressure down, the option might have been there to like fight for the finish there in the third. Khabib was tired, tried to enter a couple of takedowns, couldn't. Looked like he'd kind of burned himself out in the first two rounds. In the second round, he had Conor in a pretty bad position, and the fight was very close to being stopped. And I think he threw like 40 shots. A lot of them were landing on the arms. That's exhausting. Just like he was just swinging punches down Conor, blocking most of them. So I think that's what took it out of him in the second, and then the third, he looked pretty tired. He failed on 2 or 3 takedowns in a row, and it looked like it was starting to unfold a little bit. And just I don't know if Conor had it in the tank then to push for the finish, you know. So.
How did that flip then in the fourth round?
Well, he would have, when he failed on the takedowns, he kind of eased off and stayed standing for the rest of the round. Then he had the minute break in between. I think they were pressed against the cage. This is the round where he's talking about Conor putting his finger in the gloves and stuff like this, which is like, you know, you could call it cheating, but it's like a lot of things in sport. You find a little way around the rules. These are slight little things that everyone would do. Like he was putting his finger into the glove so Khabib can't free his hand up to grip him. This was happening against the cage at the end of the third, I think it is. And Khabib seems to get pretty riled up by that. And then the minute break in between, he came out and he got the takedown fairly quickly in the fourth. So.
What can McGregor do? So say if you go back to what you were talking about at the start, where you said he can't under any circumstances allow himself to go onto his back. Is that a situation where McGregor could tactically have approached that a little bit different to avoid that? Or is Khabib just so bloody good in that position that it was always going to happen and there's nothing he could do about it, McGregor?
Yeah, it's a little from column A, a little from column B in my opinion. Like Khabib is obviously phenomenal. He's done it to so many guys before. I think when I watched his previous fights, the guys that seemed to do best against him were like guys like Ala Quinta. That was his last fight before Conor. He scrambled straight back to his feet constantly. He didn't care about getting taken back down. What he was thinking is, if I get back up, he has to go through all the effort of taking me back down. That's the most tiring part.
Okay.
So he was I'm going to do this. He's going to get tired, and that's what happened to Khabib in the fight. He gasped pretty badly around the third and fourth, and then came back and kind of dominated towards the end again. So that would have been my approach, just keep scrambling back to the feet, don't worry about the takedown, doesn't matter. Like I almost set out to lose the first 2 rounds with him taking you down, but using all his gas tank to do so, you know.
And that little window that between Khabib's first and second wind, do you think that was more of an opportunity for McGregor that he should have exploited a little bit more when he was gassing a little bit, that there would have been whatever, a 90-second period there where he was trying to recover?
I felt like if you watch the fight, there's a period, Conor, and it was obviously because he was tired, actually stayed in the pocket with Khabib at this stage, where realistically I would have liked to see that long distance Conor that we've seen in the past outside, pinging that straight left down the pipe. But obviously, as I said, he'd been carrying the guy for 2 rounds, so he was tired when it came around to that. So I think like Khabib kind of looked to press against the cage then and was just kind of holding there. He wasn't really like looking for he didn't have the energy to go for the takedown by the looks of things.
A lot of questions coming in. Darren Doherty, can you ask Chris, was the turning point the shot McGregor took in the second, and is there a way or for McGregor preparing to make a rematch worthwhile?
The shot in the second, Conor has shown in the past, actually, a lot of people don't give him much credit for this. He's got an amazing chin. He can really take a shot. Khabib is a far inferior striker to Conor, but this is the beauty of MMA compared to any other sport, is that Conor is constantly thinking about the takedown. So when Khabib drops a level like that, all he's thinking about the takedown, then Khabib swung a big overhand, right? I don't think that happened in the second. Conor had his best round in the third. Khabib's best round other than getting the finish was the second, so he landed that shot, he got a takedown, he landed a lot of shots on Conor, but then like I said, it felt like he gassed himself out a little bit. He maybe tried for a few takedowns in the third, couldn't get them, took his foot off the gas a little, going, right, I'm either going to completely blow my wad now, I'm going to have to step back, and then Conor started to pressure him and landed some shots. So I don't think the right hand was the big turning point. I would have thought in the second round, the turning point would have been the takedown, the shots he landed. He passed to some good positions as well, which wasn't great for Conor.
Conor was illegally gripping the cage, had an illegal knee, an illegal elbow, gripped the cage, illegally held his glove. Were these signs of desperation?
You know, like most people be desperate if a big gorilla is swinging at you. You know, he's like, the guy's a monster. You know, he's phenomenal at what he did. I suppose they are, but you know, there's an old saying, probably maybe kids shouldn't listen to this, but if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying, you know. So you gotta be like trying everything in your arsenal to get out of these bad situations. I'd almost appreciate that he did that rather than turn over and show his back, you know.
So this is the fight game. That's the fight game right there, isn't it?
Those kind of things are okay. Like, you know, that's sport in general. Everyone looks for an edge, you know. No one's going to go, oh, I was offside there, sorry. You know, if you get away with it, you're going to take it. You know, those little things are part and parcel of the sport.
Was the fight less close than it, like?
I think
it's a dominant performance.
Yeah, it was. It was a dominant. No, I wouldn't say a very dominant performance. He lost a round, but it was a dominant performance. But I think it was like we spoke about. It was going to be whoever got their game off, and it was always going to. If Conor had got his game off, it would have looked like Khabib had no business being in there with him. Like, people would have been like, "Oh, who is this guy? What was the point?" You know what I mean? But it was Khabib who got his game off. You know.
Somebody else was asking, was the finish a neck crank? How do they work?
So it's the same thing. It's choke, neck crank. It becomes a neck crank by you keeping your chin down. So the choke is on the neck, obviously. If you put your chin down, then it's across here and it's pulling pulling back, so it's bringing my chin over to one side and my head the other. Not very nice. Not very nice at all.
There's
But that's almost like one of those things we're talking about, like gripping the glove. Conor's keeping his chin down to stop being choked.
Yeah.
So then he's opting to go for the neck crank. It's the same idea, like, you know, the same thing.
It's your response to the...
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And when you saw that, you knew straight away.
I knew actually when he showed his back. I knew it was pretty much done at that stage. Like, you know, it's it was like a tough fight. A good performance by Khabib. Not his best performance. Like I said, in the third round he looked beatable. You know, this has happened a couple of times where he's looked gassed. I don't know if that was part of their game plan to wait for that moment, and maybe when the moment arose, Conor didn't have as much in the tank as he was planning on having, or whatever. You know, maybe he didn't think Khabib was going to feel the way he felt. Like a lot of this stuff is, you can get all the guys in you want, you can have all the training partners, you can do everything you want. Conor had he was a very good wrestling coach, but he had a couple of Moldovan guys in to help him. But I can pretty much guarantee they're not going to feel like Khabib. But you don't know that till you feel him.
Yeah.
You know, and that I've had that myself in fights. You go, oh my God, that guy's strong.
Right, okay.
You know, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of my training partners be big dudes. Like, but you just go, oh my God, that, or like he hits your glove and you're like, oh my God, that I don't want to get hit by one of them. You know.
Yeah. Like it has been mentioned over the last 24 hours. The whole 145 thing, like, is Conor McGregor just simply too old at this moment in time to be able to go back to that level, to be able to make that horrendous weight cut, the thing that he hates so much that he's spoken about? Or is there just sort of an element where he needs to get used to this a little bit more? Is he still feeling his way into the division? Like,
yeah, I think like the 155 division is stacked, and you know. For that, like, I don't know if there's going to be a rematch. I don't know what's going to happen now, but I think like the game plan may be different next time around, and they might approach it a bit differently. I think Khabib is beatable. I think that was shown in that fight for me. I know a lot of people would have watched it and just went, that was a very dominant performance, and it was, but I could see the gaps, I could see the holes that could be exploited. I think the division's a bit strange at the moment, so there's like a little triangle, and a lot will depend on what happens with Khabib, and in my opinion he shouldn't be fighting anytime soon, like for what went on. But there's a triangle there. There's Tony Ferguson, there's Conor, and there's Khabib. I think Khabib-Tony makes a very intriguing fight. I think Tony has a phenomenal jiu-jitsu game off his back and a real pressure game on the feet. And I think he could beat Khabib. I think his style could beat Khabib. But then I think Conor beats Tony fairly easy, because Tony gets hit and you don't get hit by Conor. You know what I mean? So I think there's a weird little triangle there. And then I don't know what way, if Conor does things correctly, can he beat Khabib? I don't know if he can. So if Khabib can, or if Conor can't beat Khabib, Khabib can't beat Tony, but Conor can beat Tony. You have a weird triangle going on where that belt could bounce around between the three of them for a while.
Yeah, and
which makes for that was the highlight, the greatest time in boxing was that these guys, it was that middleweight division where Hagler was beating everyone. He was battering Hearns, he was beating all, and then he couldn't beat Leonard, you know, and these guys were all beating each other. It was a phenomenal time for boxing, like, you know.
Yeah, so it just sounds that this idea that overall, all-round, Khabib Nurmagomedov is a far superior fighter to Conor McGregor. You just don't subscribe to that whatsoever.
No, not at all. I think like you can see it. Sure, if you watch the fight back, and maybe like when you're watching something at 6 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and you're like, oh, like this. But if you watch it back and you watch technically what was going on, Conor did quite well defending a lot of the takedowns against the fence. When he got taken down, Khabib only twice really managed to do much damage in the whole fight, and then on the feet looked very suspect other than that right hand he landed. You know, so I think Ferguson's skill set matches up really well against Khabib, and I think like Khabib fights for the takedown, and Ferguson is in the division probably one of the most comfortable guys off his back.
Yeah,
so it makes for an intriguing matchup, that one.
There is a point too that it's been 2 years really since McGregor has fought at this level. Like,
he looked a little nervous. I don't know if anyone else noticed that. I thought he looked a little. It's the first time I've ever seen that from Conor. I thought even, you know, the bits where he walks into the middle of the cage and does like all his showman stuff looked maybe a little bit forced, you know. I've never seen that from Conor before. Conor is, I was saying this here, I would have always thought him as one of those athletes that wouldn't suffer from ring rust, you know, but he did look a little bit nervous on the night.
And that could just be the end. Like, you could reach that point where it's like, as Andy Lee was saying, you know, you're in there, you're feeling that power for the first time, because it's the first time you've been up against Khabib, and it's like, okay, I've had enough now.
Yeah.
And no one's going to blame him.
No, like the guys, like if Conor said tomorrow he's going to retire, like he's one of the greatest athletes the country's ever produced, like, and he's one of the greatest fighters ever to fight in the UFC. The guy's career is stellar. Like he's taken. There's never been anyone in the sport that's held 2 titles in 2 divisions at the same time, pretty much. Like, you know, so it's like whatever he wanted to do, he could have done that a year ago as well, and it wouldn't have been a problem, you know. But I don't know. I don't think that'll sit well with Conor.
Yeah.
From me, what I know of him, I don't think that'll sit well with him. I don't think like going out on a loss would be a nice experience for Conor.
So if you're him, what do you want? Do you want Khabib in a rematch, or do you want that other fight to happen first and then you fight the winner of that?
I'd imagine he wants Khabib in a rematch. Like any fighter worth their salt would walk away from a loss and want to get it back, you know. It's a pretty emotional thing to happen to you as well, like to lose a fight. It's gut wrenching, and he'll be. Well, I know from my experience and from talking to Conor and even how he handled Diaz fight, that'll be wrenching at his heart every night.
Yeah, good enough. Looking forward to the rematch was the tweets.
Straight to the point.
So we'll see what the crack is. That I'm going to play you some of this post-match. So here is Dana White first talking to the media after UFC 229.
You weren't going to do anything. Had you suspended Conor for X period of time, that you don't think that would have had any deterrent
impact? Had nothing to do
impact?
with that. He wasn't coming back and saying he wants to jump over the fence because we didn't suspend Conor. Jumped over the fence because Conor's guy was talking to him.
No, understood. But don't you think that just the fact that set the tone, like allow that to happen, if there had been some...
Do you have any idea how much money it cost Conor?
I don't.
The whole thing, that it's millions of dollars.
But the signal, like Khabib doesn't know that, or Khabib's team doesn't know that, and so
they know that.
The argument, the point I'm making, not an argument, I'm asking you a question, would be it's a deterrent effect. If you say you look in the NFL or wherever they suspended guys for a period of time, it serves as a deterrent to other people to not do that same thing. And I guess that's what I'm saying. Had you taken some action on the UFC part, he violated the code of conduct or whatever you want to say he did, would that not have maybe prevented some of the heated stuff that happened this promotion?
I would, listen, we didn't, so I don't know, but I would say no. If we suspended Conor, I don't think that was going to stop or slow down or hinder the hatred between these two camps. And I'm sure these guys don't give a about suspensions and stuff like this. This is so much bigger than that to these guys. This is some street that's going on here. This isn't sport.
This is some street shit going on here was the bit that got bleeped out, just for anybody who was uncertain of what Dana White was saying there. I was going to play you what Khabib had to say, and then we'll get Chris's thoughts on this. So this is Khabib speaking after the fight.
First of all, I want to say sorry to Athletic Commission, Nevada, sorry to Vegas. I know this is not my best side, this is not my best side. I'm human being, and I don't understand how people can talk about I jump on the cage, What about he talk about my religion, he talk about my country, he talk about my father. He come to Brooklyn and he broke bus, he almost killed couple people. What about this? Why people talk about I jump over the cage? Why people still talk about this? I don't understand. I am respect. My father teach me, hey, you have to be always respectful. My old team, where I'm training California 7 years, everybody know who I am. All my friends, everybody who know me, they know who I am, And I told you guys, these guys, not only him, his whole team and him, they tap machines. I told you guys, when you put him wrong way, he gonna tap. What happened today? They call him 2-time world champion, 2 weight classes, but today he tap. And that's why, alhamdulillah, belt is here, undisputed, undefeated UFC lightweight champion. And and I wanna say something people little bit, it's not people, I think it's media. Media a little bit change MMA. This is respect sport, This is not trash talking sport. This is respect. So I told you before, guys, I want to change this game.
Okay, so you were saying an interesting point there. Then what exactly? Did you
It's
say?
just like
Which
when he says, "I want to change the sport." Like I think he mentioned something like that in the build-up, and I thought he meant, I'm going to be the greatest of all time, and everybody's going to remember Khabib Nurmagomedov as one of the greatest UFC fighters, one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time. But actually, when he speaks there, when he says he wanted to change the sport, he wants to change the discourse around the fights. He doesn't want it to go to the level that he believes Conor McGregor brought some of the press conference discourse to, and he wants to change it for the better.
By jumping into the crowd.
He did a great job of that.
Yeah, there you go.
Like he's literally possibly done. No, it's definitely the worst thing that's ever happened in the sport. Like, because like what with the bus incident, as it were, it didn't endanger like what how many people were there? 20,000 people. He jumped into a crowd. All hell could have broke loose there. All hell could. Luckily, no one was hurt at all. Like, and everything's okay now. I think I think the UFC have to come down hard on them. I think they've set their stall out though, so it's going to be difficult for them to do that. So.
But when you hear the questioning of Dana White, where he's asked, did you have any influence over this by allowing McGregor basically to get away with it? Oh, that cost him loads of money.
Yeah.
But it also added millions to the gate receipts and to the pay-per-views.
Yeah.
Like, it was, at the time, you knew that this was going to make the fight between Khabib and McGregor more sellable and more watched and more valuable.
Yeah, and
so
that's the approach they took, rather than let's take a stand for the sport, like, and go, right, this isn't acceptable. Like I said, they're a promotion, not the sport, and like they actually don't really fall under anyone's jurisdiction other than when they fight in a place, the commission of that place.
Yeah.
I think Conor might be, I don't know if this came true, but at the time I remember he was banned from fighting in New York because of what happened. So he's not allowed to fight in New York. So they took their stand.
Yeah.
But the UFC didn't really follow suit, if that makes sense.
It's up to Nevada now. I wonder, is somebody going to have a word? Like, I mean,
but sure, if Nevada ban him, he can fight in New York.
Yeah. Like,
so he's only not allowed to fight in Vegas, So it's up to the UFC to say, we're not going to have him on the cards. That's what has to happen. Dana and the UFC have to go, it's not about Nevada. Nevada can do what they want about him fighting in Nevada. He's not going to find a UFC card for a year. We were just talking about Cantona, same situation, worse situation. He flew and kicked a fan in the face, sorry. But like, they just went, you're not going to play football for 9 months. And he wasn't allowed to go and play for France. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't allowed to play for anyone. He was just banned from football for 9 months, and that's what needs to happen.
That's because there was so if Man United had the option, they would have been able to, we'll ban him for 2 games.
Yeah.
He'll say sorry, there'll be a press conference and away we go, because he's their asset.
Yeah.
But instead it was an outside body who was able to do it. And in this instance, there's nobody to do that.
Yeah, well, there is, but they have to be, they're just a governing body of an area. You know what I mean? So the UFC needs to take that role upon themselves, but they're wanting to make as much money as they can. So it's a nasty little situation.
It is.
Same with a boxing promoter. Like, he's going to do exactly the same thing. If Nevada say this guy can't fight, he's going to put the fight on in New York, So.
What about the other main co-event? Was it as good as everybody's saying?
It's a great fight. Yeah, it was a great fight. Like I said, I think Tony has the potential to beat Khabib, and then Conor has the potential to beat Tony. Tony's just a wild man in there. He's so fun to watch, and he streams like his striking and his submissions so smoothly together. But he's very hittable because of his style. He's a very aggressive, kind of crazy style, and I think that would sit well for a fight with Conor.
Okay. Sooner rather than later? Like, how soon can McGregor fight after this?
Well, I think, like, we're asking what the next fight should be for like title contention and all that stuff. It's Tony, especially if Khabib's on the shelf. But if it's about the money fight and interest, it's Diaz 3, I suppose. Like, they're one each, so the rubber matches. I think that'd show the most interest, right? I think people would be more interested in seeing Conor fight. Well, like,
I don't know. I think if I'm
the purists, well, I want to see him fight Tony. But
I think, and that makes more sense, because then so whoever wins that, it's an eliminator.
Yeah, it's lineage. Yeah.
And you can leave the Diaz fight on the shelf for McGregor's last fight in the UFC. It's like
like
his
a
farewell.
Yeah.
You get the trilogy and everybody. So if you do that now and he loses, there's nowhere left to go, right?
The UFC haven't shown, like we've been talking about, they've shown an interest in money, and so there's probably a lot more money to be made from the Diaz fight. Like, but yeah, I'd agree with you. I'd like to see him fight Tony next, because I think it kind of ties off that division. Then who's who, basically. Like.
And what is the recovery period from a fight like the fight?
I'd imagine it'll probably be like 6 months till Conor fights again. Like, yeah. 5 or 6 months at least. Like I'd imagine. Like, they want a little layoff. I know his wife Dee is expecting soon and stuff like that. So I'd say he'd want a little breather for all that stuff. Like.
What is the physical toll of a fight like that and being choked out like that?
The choking out, like, that happened to me 4 times a week in the gym. You know what I mean? Like when you're training, if you're training with good guys, you're getting caught with that stuff. Like that wouldn't be the stress. It's the build-up, it's the training to get there is what wears on you. You know, the fight itself, isn't it? You have a few knocks and bruises generally after, but it's the 12 weeks getting ready for the fight that'll wear and tear on your body, you know?
Yeah. All right, Chris, great stuff. Thanks very much for that.
Thanks a lot.
You can check out Chris's stuff, obviously, on Twitter and, of course, at the SPG out in Swords. Now, Alan Quillen is going to join us in a moment to talk about the rugby. Here's Johan van Graan speaking after Munster's loss to Leinster on Saturday evening.
I thought the first one cost us 14 points. And we worked pretty hard over the last few weeks to work on our composure when we go a score or two down. And I thought we did that fantastically well. Came back to 14-12. On the second one, I think it was the 42nd minute. It was a 14-point swing. We got called back with a certain try, and then there was a call made, the opposition went to the corner and then they scored a try. I guess all I can say is you want consistency. Oh, look, if the referee thought that there was interference with the blue player, then the laws of the game says then it's got to be a penalty try and a yellow card, and he just made that decision, so I'll stick with his decision.
So Johan van Graan being somewhat diplomatic in the aftermath of the victory for Leinster over Munster at the Aviva on Saturday night. Alan Quillen is here to talk to us about this. The refereeing was abysmal. Like, there was a series of events and it seemed mostly to go one side. I saw some of the Leinster fans complaining that Munster were offside the entire first half, but like, notwithstanding, maybe they were. The grounding on the first try I thought was a little bit dodgy. The 4 penalties under the post, dodgy. The deliberate knock-on, which led to a penalty, from which Leinster scored their try, actually leads to a breakaway try for Munster. I think the yellow card and the penalty try is he got no option once he thinks that that's the rule. Yeah. But the rest of them is like, it changes the game.
Yeah, it was really poor. I think it was really poor performance by Ben Whitehouse and his officials, Dan Jones and
I think your mic was off there, so you were at this game as well, on.
Yeah, the poor refereeing performance obviously replicated with the fact that it was like mostly Leinster fans in the ground. Like, I mean, the fact of the matter is that it was still like, as Alan tries to figure it out.
There you go. Like, mute button's on. Mute.
We can chat about the whole rivalry in a moment as well, but ultimately, I think you were making the point beforehand that it's going to be like half a Leinster team playing out there against Munster at the weekend. Like, they're really only 4 players away from their starting Leinster team, and the manner with which Munster played, it was their best performance of the season. But if the refereeing decisions were all correct, Munster would have won that game. I think that is the case, and given the supposed chasm between the two sides, I think Munster can come away from this pretty satisfied, because ultimately it's a derby. You want to beat your closest rival. But ultimately, it's so early in the season that this is a barometer of where you're at, and I think Munster can be very satisfied where they're at.
I think they're satisfied. The Glasgow and Cardiff games were horrendous from this year, and that was their third away game, and it was a much better performance. You kind of I have a fair bit of optimism, but then you think Furlong is missing, Sexton is missing, Ringrose is missing. Who's the other one you're talking about?
Well, I would say there was 4 players playing for Leinster that wouldn't be in the ballpark for starting. So you'd have O'Loughlin, you'd have Bent, you'd have Tracy, and you'd have Ross Byrne. So you take away the 4 of them, you put in your starters, you put in Ringrose, you put in Sexton, you put in Furlong, and you put in Sean Cronin, who's probably going to start. But even there's kind of like a question about the gap there, that I don't think it was as weak in the Leinster team as a lot of Leinster fans would like to tell you.
No, it wasn't as weak. Well, but you take 3 quality internationals like that, okay. But then Munster could argue, look, Murray's missing, Chris Farrell is missing, Taute is not back to full fitness, John Ryan is missing, a few options for him, particularly in that centre partnership there. Dan Goggin, I thought, played really well, and Sam Arnold, but that little bit of touch of magic, they had a lot of ball, 65% possession. At one stage it was 77%. So Munster had so much ball. I think the frustrating point, and the Leinster fans will probably, that you're mentioning there, are saying, well, Munster were offside. Absolutely. There was loads of incidents in the game that could have went either way. There was entries into breakdowns, but it was the big moments, the crucial times. The penalty try for me was, look, It's probably a penalty try. There's no major issues with that. Look, Keith Earls touched him from behind. Would he have caught the ball? The pass was bad from Gibson Park. But look, if it was the other way around, Munster people would want a penalty try and the yellow card. So fair enough with that. Cost them 14 points. It was a big moment in the game, and it was a bit of naivety from Munster defensively on that side of the pitch for the initial break for that penalty try. The one where Sam Arnold tackles Robbie Henshaw is really harsh. It's really harsh.
It makes no sense.
And the touch judge intervenes, Mike English. Three guys were Welsh, Ben Whitehouse, Dan Jones, and he intervenes. Keith Earls is gone, picks up the ball, goes up the field, scores a try. The problem here is they stopped it, and I know they're trying to. World Rugby are trying to speed up the process and try not to have intervention at times from TMOs and get the officials on the field to make decisions, particularly the referee. But he's got to let that play out, come back watching the TMO.
And then make a call.
And it shows that Dan Goggin didn't knock the ball on. It hit initially his shoulder, head made contact, his head probably touched the ball. Was Robbie Henshaw's hand maybe the last person to touch the ball? Because I was thinking then, is Keith Earls in front? So what they would have had to go back and then decide is Keith Earls in front? Was it a knock on? Was it Robbie Henshaw's pass when he got hit and the ball pops out? So you have a bit of a debate there, but it's not conclusive. So I think it's a try. It will be given as a try. Leinster kick into the corner, and after a number of phases, and I probably had a more issue with these. CJ Stander's locked onto the ball for 3 or 4 seconds.
Yeah, I thought it was Ty Byrne, but go on, yeah.
But then Ty Byrne is locked onto the ball for 3 or 4 seconds.
And it's not given.
Neither get rewarded.
Yeah.
And then a ruck or two later, it's a try in the corner. So, look, I have to be careful here because, for obvious reasons, I think Leinster are an incredible side, and they're a side that any player would love to be in because Leo Cullen and his coach have created an environment where...
Sorry, you have to be careful because people will call you Homer. Is that what...
A little bit, yeah. But at the end of the day...
I think that any objective Leinster supporter watching that thinks that
to be fair, a lot of people I thought they did. Now, there's no guarantee that Munster still would have won the game. I kind of agree that they would have been in a much better position.
Maybe I'm looking at it in too black and white.
No, look, I think they probably...
I think they probably would have won the game.
They probably would have won the game. There was like...
Leinster have that extra gear, though, is the thing. There was kind of like the sense that...
But Leinster didn't create a huge amount of chances as
Leinster played really badly. There was like 3 knock-ons in a 2-minute period in the first half. In that first 15 minutes...
What they are very good at, Ger, is staying composed, and their defence is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And you know what? Their breakdown work is unbelievable. 64 from 64 rucks, resourced and won.
Yeah.
So they lost no ruck in the game.
Their defence is great when you're not getting yellow cards when you're collapsing scrums. Like everybody's defence is great when you're not being refereed.
I think the one that really kind of got to Munster players at the end was the 4th scrum.
Yeah.
And then it's at the back of the scrum and Munster gradually started to move forward and Ben Whitehouse is shouting at CJ Stander, use it.
Now the try comes off
that infuriates me.
I'm sure.
It did in watching games for any team.
Because he's not a coach.
The art of scrummaging is, I love it as a forward and whatever, but don't, after the 4th scrum, tell the number 8 to take it out to make the decision easier for you, that you don't have to sin bin someone or give another penalty.
That should have been a penalty try, and it should have been...
Well, if Stander leaves it in there and he isn't shouting at Stander to use it, I think the scrum is disintegrating again. It's a penalty try and it's a yellow card.
Yeah.
Leinster down to 14 with 12, 14 minutes left, or whatever the time was. Matheson does score. They concede the 7, but they still have 15 on the field. Then Archer, ran across, blocked McFadden, which cost and took away a bonus point from. But Leinster are really good at... their defence is phenomenal. They don't panic. So, we don't know, would they have, without those couple of scores and the bit of fortune that they got, part of me feels they still would have had an ability to turn it on when they needed to, because they're such a very good side, to be fair to them. But I think it's hard on Munster because they put so much effort and work into that and they didn't get the rewards. But I think they can take a lot of positives out of it. Going to Exeter, which is an incredibly difficult match for them next Saturday. But the refereeing and the officiating was shocking, to say the least.
What was Stephen Archer doing, though? That was brain dead, because he got away with it the first time.
It was interesting, because it was highlighted. Liam Tolan spoke about it, and he highlighted it.
Before it happened.
Before that one, and then does it again, and just, it's very obvious, you have to be so careful, because he turns to the side. If you're running backwards towards the ball,
be a lazy runner all you want, right? Yeah. But
don't look at the player and turn side on and kind of... Yeah, so that was crucial to him because putting it out to 8 points just give Leinster that little bit of breathing space.
It's game over.
Yeah, because look, even a 7-pointer, they're still winning the game. They don't really care whether, obviously they prefer Munster not to get a losing bonus point, but it doesn't really affect them. They're in a different conference. But it's the game. It's the 8 point. It's 2-score scenario where 1 score you're going 5 points in it. Munster have a chance throw the kitchen sink at it and maybe force a penalty or
See what happens. Yeah.
Let's into the corner or something. They have a chance, but 8 points is too difficult. But look, I thought he was outstanding, Archer. In fairness, it's just a pity that one mistake. I've been there, Ger, many times. You have a good game, you give away a stupid penalty, and people remember that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's what happened. But I thought he was outstanding, and a lot of positives. Munster scrum, Munster line out, and look, it's not a true reflection because we're talking about the Leinster guys who are not there. You put a Ringrose back in there, a Furlong, Sexton. They're outstanding international players. Three of those guys, maybe Cronin might come back in.
Jordan Larmour.
They can, Jordan Larmour is a fourth, one with that bit of X factor.
And some of your bench is way better as well.
Well, that's the thing. The depth is the reason why Leinster are the best team in Europe. Like I thought, Josh van der Fleer, for example, was absolutely sensational when he came off the bench. I just want to get your take on Munster's midfield because Tony Ward is writing in the Uno this morning that you couldn't pay him all the money in the world to give the correct take on what is Munster's best pairing in midfield. Like, what do you think?
Well, the problem they have at the moment is Jaco Tauta is just back from the knee injury, and it takes he's not as sharp as they would like, and it's a very difficult injury to come back. I had it before. You can get back after 5.5, 6 months nowadays from a cruciate, but it's getting up to that match speed and fitness, and he's probably a little bit away and had 1 or 2 little setbacks. Chris Farrell is, an incredible player, and I think he's a couple of weeks away as well. So if they were fit, and then you have Niall Scannell, Dan Goggin, Sam Arnold, you're probably going with a Rory Scannell and Chris Farrell are probably the two that you'd pick off on paper. I thought Dan Goggin, though, has shown really a lot of promise in the last few weeks. He was really good the other night, very powerful and physical. So I don't know their best pairing. They don't know it. And to be fair to Johan van Graan, he doesn't know it because they're not all available to him at once. Rory Scannell gives a great option with the left-footed kick. His distribution is another good option for him as well. So he very well could start this week. But it's an issue where that little bit of subtlety, that bit of class.
Pick the Irish back row for us now.
Well, I'm picking it on the basis of what they had last year and probably over the summer.
Everybody's suddenly fit for the first time ever.
Yeah, and they've got to play well. I thought Sean O'Brien was really good the other night and very competitive again and very physical.
Is he now number 8? Is that what we're looking here? He's an 8?
No, I don't think so. I think he can play in all 3, and that's the versatility that he can bring. I think it's O'Mahony, Stander and Levy at the moment. I think Sean O'Brien needs to play a number of games. Like, there's absolutely no doubt he's a starter on the Irish team if he's number of games proven he's not carrying anything and can get through the 80 minutes. 7.
Right.
I think it's O'Mahony has to stay in the team, like it or not. I think he's playing really well this year. But his line-out is sensational, and I think to give that extra option in the line-out, Peter O'Mahony has to play really poorly.
So it's 2 from Stander, O'Brien and Levy?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. So look, there's a lot of options there. Rhys Ruddock is someone who's a really good player. Jack Conan has come back in the mix. As you say, Van der Fleer, loads of options. But at the moment, I think it's
there's one thing about what if they stay fit, when there's no chance they will because they play in such an abrasive position and their job is to hit and resource every ruck, and that just leads to wear and tear. But if they were all to stay fit, you now have a situation where you can pick, from an Ireland perspective, completely horses for courses. You can put Van der Fleer in your team and say, I want you to kill the 10. I just want you to do nothing today except kill the 10. And we've never really had this before where we would always have picked our best players just to enforce our game. But you can suddenly begin to see these weird combinations which maybe from the outside we're going, what's he doing here? But actually, as the game plan unfolds, you see that there's a method to the changes.
Yeah, I think I'm not a huge fan of horses for courses type selections at times.
Why not?
Based on...
You were always the victim of the...
No, I wasn't really. It benefited me in 2003 at the World Cup where we were playing Argentina, and I got picked at 7 ahead of Keith Leeson because I was deemed to be an extra line-out option, maybe a little bit more physical, whereas Keith was a real groundhog and stuff like that. So I benefited from your horses for courses type scenario. I mean, horses for courses over form. So if Dan Levy is playing really well, Stander and O'Mahony, that you say, oh, we're going to put in Josh van der Fleer because we want him to do it. There's a risk in that, you know, but it does give an option. What it does with them all being fit, it enables Joe Schmidt to actually say, lads, you know,
competition.
It needs your performance needs to be at 80, 90%, 95% today, because, you know, if not, the boys are chomping at the bit behind. And then you have options off the bench as well. And it makes great, you know what it does, Ger? It makes it really, really, really competitive in training. And that's sometimes where you see, if there's a 50-50 call, you see a bit of attitude, you see that extra bit of desire, and that sometimes can sway a coach. But unbelievable options, like Van der Fleer started in Paris last year, got the knee injury, and then Dan Levy goes in this incredible run. He was injured post-Christmas last year, if you remember Dan Levy. He came back and played against Exeter in Dublin and was incredible for Leinster in December. So it can change very quickly, and certainly a lot of options there for him.
Two other quick things we want to talk about. Connacht's first win at Ravenhill in 58 years. They won 22-15 on Friday night.
I wasn't surprised.
It was kind of predictable in like a big shock that's in some ways predictable and expected after the previous week's performances, where Connacht were good but beaten relatively straightforward by Leinster, and Ulster were as bad as they've ever been in their history against Connacht. So
I thought the scoreline, the scoreline for the Leinster game against Connacht was possibly a little bit unfair. It was like we're saying it again. Leinster are so intelligent in managing and controlling a game, and you know Connacht, that scoreline could have been closer. But I wasn't surprised that Connacht went to Ulster, and because they're playing with a lot of confidence, even in defeat. A couple of games they lost. They were brilliant against the Scarlets. They seem to have a confidence about them, a self-belief that's back. They're executing pretty well. And I thought there's still, unfortunately, chinks in the Ulster armoury, and they have problems and issues there that are tough for Dan McFarland. They were really poor on Friday night, but Connacht held onto the ball really well, and it was a great win for them.
What's the biggest Ulster issue?
There's a few, I think. I just think their ability to score and control possession, and you know, Billy Burns at 10, John Cooney, their ability to put him in the right areas in the field. He's very good with ball in hand, Billy Burns. And then probably what's happening up front, the delivery they're getting from scrums and lineouts is, these question marks have been with Ulster for years, their front five and their ability to have imposed themselves in the game, and I still think those issues are still there, unfortunately. And you can't just sign guys, or you can recruit really well, but they have a number of injuries there as well, and their issues from up front.
There's a 30 million redeveloped stadium plan for Connacht that has been announced. We'll get into that with Darren in a couple of minutes' time. But the other thing that we want to talk about is the there you go there. So planning application due for 30 million development sports ground. 12,000 capacity facility open to use by all sports. Greyhound racing to continue will also be a high performance academy. Agreement reached between Connacht Rugby and the Greyhound board and owners, which is great. So we'll talk about that a bit more in a couple of minutes' time. We also want to talk about this. It's the half-time Australia 31-7 down, and it looks like Michael Cheika is about to get sacked. This is the half-time team talking. You know, Cheika's a calm individual at the best of times. Well, then they come out and they win the game.
Yeah, they were 31-7 down at half-time, and an horrendous run. And he shows a lot of emotion, wears his heart in his sleeve. And he said this a number of times. Here's a coach who's a multi-millionaire, he's not in this for the money, for the job security. He's there. He shows that passion. Sometimes it kind of tips overboard. His heart is in the right place of what he's trying to achieve. Is he stubborn? Is he a bit too pragmatic at times? Possibly. But they've underperformed, and they've consistently shown vulnerability when the going gets tough. I think when on the Ireland tour, they got very excited about beating Ireland the first test when Ireland, Joe Schmidt had made 7 or 8 changes from the Grand Slam winning team. I thought they got carried away with themselves. They lost the second and third tests, and they felt hard done by a little bit. And so I don't know, there's been a fair few calls in Australian rugby
for him to go.
Yeah, for Michael Cheika to go. I'd be a fan of his as regards. I love that kind of passion that he has, and I know But like if you lose the team and the results, you're based on results, they're not good enough. They've won 3 from 9 in their internationals this year.
We had Stephen Larkham on, you helped sort it out, and he come on and talked for half an hour. Like, it's not like there isn't somebody in the setup who is a rugby genius brain, who's calm and composed, and like there's yin to that yang, so it's not like the whole
it
setup
might not
is,
suit him. Cheika's approach might not suit him. It doesn't, like, every coach is different and every player doesn't, everyone in the whole squad doesn't love every coach, the coach at any given time, even if you're winning. So they have obvious talent, but I still think, a little bit like I was saying about Ulster, up front at times they're not powerful enough.
Simon Ziwa scored his 6th try of the season. It's been a real disaster for him so far.
Yeah. And got picked up an injury.
Is he all right?
Unfortunately, yeah, he had to go off as well. But yeah, I chat to Rog about it, and he keeps an eye because he's in Paris at the moment, and he thinks Ziwa's flying it. He did brilliantly for that try. It was a 2-on-3, and he kind of glided.
You're going to see a lot of people looking at Simon Ziwa going, yeah, I'll have a bit of that.
Yeah, you know the way everybody's like, we don't mind what the RFU do to make sure that Ireland win the World Cup next year, and you can rest players for all the big Heineken Cup games if you want. We don't care. Why don't they go the extra mile and say, we're going to relax the international rule and the people who have to play in our own grounds for this one World Cup, because it's our best ever chance of the greatest ever sporting achievement in Irish sport.
Maybe, but I don't think they will, and I don't think they should. I don't think they should, to be honest. I think I agree with the situation that it seems a bit unfair, and a lot of people don't agree with it. If you choose to go, you're kind of putting yourself in a position that the floodgates will open on if they relax it, and that's just the reality. Because the money like you can imagine Conor Murray now. I know he loves playing for Munster, but if he's told, look, you can still pick you, and he possibly could go up on that, that's where it's gone now. So
and he's like,
I think they got to stick to that policy.
One last thing, Stade Francais head coach Heineken Mayer hails former Ireland star Paul O'Connell following the top 14 win over Castres at the weekend. He's very experienced, he brings a lot to us, especially in the line-out and the breakdown, but it's the culture, I think, is the main thing that he was talking about. It's not about the head coach, everyone plays a part. Paul brings a lot of experience to our team. That's not quite as effusive as the headline suggests, but there was a sense that he's raised standards across the board.
Away wins in the top 14 are kind of rare, and that is a mentality thing. And speaking to anyone, Mike Prendergast is there as well, and I'd be close to Mike as well, and Rog and Jeremy Davidson, and you meet these guys, Bernard Jackman, Dennis Fogarty was coaching there, and the one thing you get from all the time is the mentality of we're away from home. And sometimes the French coaches would pick a second string team and kind of go, well, we're going to lose this one anyway, and that's their approach. But to go to Castres, who are the champions, and get a result like that, I kind of know where Heineken Mayer is coming from.
Yeah.
It's changing the mentality of players that, like we had in Munster when we won European Cups, and like Leinster have, and they believe, look, there is challenging issues. You're playing a different stadium, crowd behind you, referee can sometimes be swayed, but control the controllables and believe you can get the result, and it does make a difference. And I watched some of that game yesterday, and Stade looked like from the word go that they were going to win the game.
When you consider that was a squad and a team that nearly didn't exist this year, that were going to be part of Racing, it's not a bad comeback. Have we got that image from Sean O'Brien's Insta? So O'Brien, obviously a little bit gassed, tongue out for 60 minutes, glad to be back at the Aviva in front of a massive Leinster rugby crowd. So he's basically saying that he was a little bit gassed for that. Quinny, thanks very much.
Pleasure, yeah.
We're going to play the rest of the rugby out here with Leo Cullen's take on the refereeing on Saturday night. Have a look.
It's when the scrums are spinning, and I'll go through this with John Fogarty in more detail, and certainly with the referee assessor, like we normally would after a game. But the way it's spinning, the officials are very hard on the defending team, is what it appears, because even we get a scrum penalty in reward to us when we've put the put in. So obviously with that sequence of scrums, the referees, even though the scrum is spinning, so I need to see what the attacking loose set is doing in those scrums, and why is it turning like that, because the referee's just making a call then and he's rewarding the attacking team every single time. So I'll look into it in more detail. I was trying to get my head around it even during the game, so as I said, we'll study in a bit more detail over the next few days.
That's genius. It's like no hint of us being in any way responsible for what went on, but they don't care because they won and there was no losing bonus point for Munster, so the big dog in the relationship at the moment is Leinster, as we knew. The big dog in the room, though, right now is Darren Cleary. Darren, how you doing?
Morning, Ger.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm absolutely thrilled. I didn't see you coming.
There's no acceptance speeches at the awards. Darren's sports broadcast of the year, so now's your opportunity, Darren.
I would like to thank everyone. Well, no, actually, I'm going to thank no one. It was all me, to be honest. This was all me. I didn't have a team of people making me look good. It was just me.
What was in your entry?
What was in my entry? I had an interview with Bernard Brogan, which was interesting because he talked about being dropped for the All-Ireland final 2 years ago. And he said that he didn't see it coming, but when he did, he made sure that he'd eyeball everyone in the huddle when the team was named out, because he knew everyone would be looking at him for a reaction to see how crushed he was. So he decided to just kind of tough it out. And he said it was a bit of a sickener, and Michael Darragh Macaulay was dropped as well. So he said the two of them had met before training to say, look, everyone's going to be looking at us and we're taking the hump and sulking here. It's going to be bad. So the team was named out and they kind of just gritted their teeth and said, we were pissed off and we were disappointed, but we got on with it.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of the standout bits. Had some stuff about Coola winning the Dublin Championship, and a few other little bits and pieces.
Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Chair. The big sports news though today is Connacht Rugby have just unveiled plans to redevelop the sports ground. The redevelopment will increase the capacity at the Galway venue from 8,000 to 12,000. The province announced the plans after reaching agreement with the Irish Greyhound Board. It will cost approximately €30 million and will be financed with a combination of public and private funds. A high-performance training centre will also be built on the same site, and greyhound racing events will continue to be held at the stadium. The venue will be made available to other sports such as soccer and GAA when required. In a statement, the province say Connacht Rugby is extremely conscious of the fact that a facility being supported by public funds will need to be of benefit to the entire community. Historically, the sports ground has played host to a range of different sports. It is Connacht Rugby's vision that this tradition will continue into the future.
This is like, there was a lot of talk that maybe they would move somewhere else, but the sports ground is handy for people to get to. There's a walk-up potential crowd. Connacht have like this huge hinterland of people, very easy to identify. The whole provincial thing works. You hope that the finances stack up and that it makes sense and that they do use it for other sports as well, but this is good news. Yeah,
it will help them like break that glass ceiling. I wonder, is there sort of a sense that they got as far as they could possibly get, that once in a while they will do something special like they managed to do in the 2015-2016 season, and that this, especially with the developmental element of it all, and the sort of centre of excellence, if we can use that term, that they're going to have there. Does that just help to take that next step forward, where they can like look across the Shannon and they see the massive resources that Leinster have, that this is like the sort of thing that says to themselves, just even have that belief that it's like, we're on a par with these guys?
The statement, though, it's a real no-brainer, some of the stuff they're saying, but it's striking as well because, I mean, we had the rows over Porky Queeve and the Liam Miller match, and the fact that it initially wasn't opened to the Liam Miller match, but municipal stadia is the way forward, you know, especially in a country our size. We can't afford to keep them shuttered 7 days a week for months on end.
We've got these mad white elephants all around the country that have had millions and millions and millions pumped into them and that are never full, and even when they are used, there's like, maybe they're used 5 or 6 times a year. It's like, it makes no sense. Whereas if all of those were kind of put into one kind of shared resource, we could have these amazing facilities that are proper community-based facilities with schools in them and all sorts of conference centres and local community centres, but we seem to be very protectionist. This is my field, Bull, that's my field. So are we going to do the rest of these, or are we just going to get into, what's your take on what happened at the weekend? Because you were banging on about MMA.
Yeah, I wouldn't be the greatest fan of MMA in the world. I didn't get up to watch it. I don't particularly like the role model Conor McGregor is for people. I think he emboldens the stupid by the way he carries on, and he gives people a chance to try and emulate that. But I don't feel that it should come back to the entire community. I think it's really ignorant, some of the comments you see where people will go out of their way to slander everyone involved in MMA, and there are...
Let me read your tweets. The people who have no time for MMA spend a lot of their time telling the world they have no time for MMA. If you care so little, why do you talk about it so much? An excellent point, Darren. The MMA community shouldn't have to defend its existence. Shouldn't have to defend its existence. Every time an idiot does something stupid, what happened at UFC 229 was grim, but making sweeping statements and passing judgment on an entire sport and community based on that incident is ignorant. It's hard to disagree, really. I mean, a lot of people are kind of saying that this is the wages of sin or death. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. The environment created by the sport begets this type of incident.
Well, just to like prove your point, there is a column right in front of me by a man called Eamon Dunphy that says, Farce showed MMA is not a credible sport, which is really just not the correct take. That, okay, I would disagree with people who kind of say that it's not a sport based on the sport itself. And fair enough if you want to write that column any other time, but to actually get on board the sort of this isn't a sport thing because of what happened with Khabib leaping out of the octagon and the ensuing brawl, I think just doesn't make sense. It's like the really wrong time to make that argument, because it is clearly a couple of idiots doing what idiots do. And is it representative of the sport as a whole? Definitely not representative of the sport as a whole. Is it representative of the UFC as a whole? Maybe there's more of a point in that, and that, you know, Dana White is actually cultivating the sort of environment. But to sort of write off the whole sport of MMA because of an idiot leaping out of a cage, I think is not right.
And people are actually doing that. I saw Mike Sheridan, you know, he's an MMA journalist. He's actually been on both sides of the fence. He did a documentary a few years ago where he actually trained to have an MMA fight, and it was a great documentary. And he actually had a reply to a tweet from someone who said, I've watched 4 or 5 of McGregor's fights. I've tried to get involved in them, but I think it's time to just stop MMA. And he was like, how can you stop an entire sport based on the actions of one person in one promotion in one fight?
But the thing is, the top brass of the UFC, namely Dana White, is totally deluded, absolutely deluded with where this thing is going or what has actually created this, because he compared the trash talk beforehand, the trash talk that you would see in any baseball, American football or basketball game.
Yeah.
Now, come on. Like, really, is there anybody actually trying to stoke geopolitical tensions before big basketball, football or baseball games? No, they're not. Get a grip. Like, the stuff that Conor McGregor comes out with is even unusual for the fight game, and the fact that it spilled over into the very reason why this happened, without justifying the end result of the things, without condoning what Khabib Nurmagomedov did, there is still a reason behind it, without kind of getting into the realms of victim blaming. So I don't know, I think there's a lot of delusion going on there, but maybe the truth of the matter is that they are just laughing all the way to the bank, and they're just calling us, and they don't even believe what they're saying themselves.
He 100% is. He puts on, you know, that voice the commentators do when a player's been badly injured, and they become slow and solemn, and, you know, they're showing shots to the crowd to avoid showing the fighter, the footballer, any sport. There's always the commentator has the voice. Dana White has it as well. He's like, I don't know where Conor is. These guys are going to get arrested. He knows controversy creates cash, and I guarantee if there is a rematch, they will 100% use every bit of fan footage, every bit of official footage they captured to promote that fight, because the controversy will create cash, and it makes him not just a millionaire, but could make him a billionaire.
That's it. There's nothing else.
No, his whiskey will make him a billionaire, won't it?
Will it?
Is there, how many billion-dollar athletes we have? Tiger?
Tiger didn't make it because...
Tiger not make the billion?
Well, I mean, if you put all the money Ian has and all the money Tiger has together, but you can't do that because, you know, I presume Jordan and
I would say
LeBron
Jordan
are going to get there. I don't know if Jordan's. I mean, the Charlotte Hornets aren't making any money, is it?
Well, from his Nike deal alone, he would assume that he'd be a billionaire. Maybe it don't happen too soon before inflation. I would say LeBron is well under it. It depends how much they actually own. Like, I mean, the percentage stake that Conor McGregor may one day get in the UFC, or the stake that you could already say he has.
He's not getting any stake. What? No one in the UFC has given Conor McGregor a stake. Absolutely not, under any circumstances.
One day, maybe.
No, never. Why would you give him a stake? He's like literally on his way down in terms of how much more money he's going to be able to make them. It's like
they put proper whiskey on the mat. They can do anything with that stake.
440 million is what LeBron is worth at the moment, apparently.
Three teams are tied for top spot in the Premier League this morning. Man City, Chelsea, Liverpool, all on 20 points. City and Liverpool played out a goalless draw at Anfield. Manager Jurgen Klopp is pleased with Liverpool's position heading into the international break, but not so happy with his players being taken away to play in what he has called the most senseless competition in the world.
If somebody would have told me after 8 match days you have 20 points, I would say with pretty much each fixture list I would have said yes. With that fixture list I would have said I buy it. Let's start with the 9th match day. So then we start with 20 points, so now we have it. The boys unfortunately go now away again and have to play Nations Cup games, the most senseless competition in the world of football. And then we hope that they come back healthy and they play this easy competition, Premier League and Champions League, and FA Cup is waiting, all that stuff. So it's tough times for the boys.
He'll be the Germany manager some year and he'll be like, oh no, this is very important, I've changed my mind.
The Nations League is not senseless, it's sensible.
He doesn't give a shite about us over in Ireland. He only cares about the Tier 1 countries. It matters to us, damn it.
Yeah, it's our back door to get into a tournament. The former Chelsea captain John Terry has called quits on his playing career. The 37-year-old left Aston Villa in the summer. He has announced his retirement. He won 5 Premier League titles, 4 FA Cups, the Champions League, Europa League and 3 League Cups with Chelsea. He's being lined up as an assistant manager, according to reports, to Thierry Henry. The Frenchman apparently set to take the top job at Aston Villa. Well, a place in the FAI Cup final is on the line tonight. Bows look to dump out the holders Cork City just days after a 1-1 draw at Dalymount between the sides. Kick-off at Turner's Cross is at 7:30. Shelbourne can move a step closer to promotion tonight. The Reds have the advantage after James English got the goal in a 1-0 win over Drogheda United. That was in the First Division playoff first leg on Friday night. Action at Tulka Park underway 7:45. Finn Harps await the winners.
Calling all students, we've teamed up with Vodafone X to fuel your passion for sport by giving you the chance to join Team Off the Ball for a full week. You'll get to see what happens behind the scenes of a show, attend a press conference, help report at a match and even feature as the co-host of a show. If that wasn't enough, you'll also receive an iPhone 8 with a year subscription to Vodafone X Sport, which gives you access to 7 dedicated Sky Sports channels. To be with a chance to win, just submit your demo tape and details to offtheball.com/Vodafone X.
Coola's defence of the All-Ireland crown is over. The reigning champions bowed out in the Dublin semi-final yesterday. Their conquerors, Kilmacud Crokes, will contest this year's Dublin Senior Hurling Championship final. They'll play Ballybowden St Enda's, a team who had a 4-point victory over St Vincent's. Crokes beat the reigning champions, the Dalkey men, by 2 points at Parnell Park yesterday. For their manager, Anthony Daly, a victory sweeter than any other.
It's a great ride. There's been no doubt about it, who's had it over each other. Like over the last 3 years, it's been Coola have been, I would have said it there in the dressing room. To me, what they've achieved would be on par with the Dublin footballers winning 4 in a row. They've been fantastic ambassadors for Dublin hurling, and I suppose it's hard, missing Paul Schutte. I know how good Paul is, and then Darragh O'Connell had to go off early. So there was an opportunity for us, I suppose, with our full panel, but we really only fell over the line at the end of it. We really lost our shape, and we have a huge amount. I mean, it's good to get the victory against such a team, but there's no cup on the table in there, so we've loads to work on.
Meanwhile, Matty Kenny has refused to be drawn on the possibility of succeeding Pat Gilroy as Dublin hurling manager. Kenny was down to the final 2 for the job last year, but wouldn't say whether he wants to be in the race for the top job in Dublin hurling this time.
I think that's an unfair question today. I'm 20 minutes after losing here at Coola, which a team that's very close to my heart. So it's today was all about Coola, and it was all about trying to get Coola to the county final, and unfortunately we failed in that task. So look, we just got to dust ourselves down and get our gear together here and get back to Coola.
Conor Callahan Footballer of the Year next year.
Yeah, chalk it down. If only, I would have thought Matty Kenny would have been one of the front runners for the job. But then, if only I started to think if there was a manager who might be available, who's previously managed Dublin, who's working in Dublin, who's had an absolutely massive victory in the Dublin Championship at the weekend.
Taylor didn't get linked with the job at all.
No, not at all.
Oh, yeah.
Does he now get linked with the job?
I'd say if he was interested in the job, the link would have happened by now, right?
Unless the Dublin County Board are now looking around thinking, actually, the answer's been right in front of our eyes all along. And suddenly the link will happen, because what you mean is that if somebody really wants a job, they'll make sure that somebody knows about it. But maybe he just needs a little bit of persuasion.
If Cunningham is to stay, which seems to be the likely plan at the moment, he'll be involved in the coaching ticket.
Not as manager?
Not as manager apparently, but himself and Kenny worked together before, and people who knew about that situation don't see them working together again in any kind of managerial dream team. So it seems that Cunningham staying might rule Kenny out. So whether or not Dalo comes in to work with Cunningham,
right?
Who knows?
So if you want to have 2 of 3, it can only be Anthony Daly and Anthony Cunningham. So there's your solution. I've solved the Dublin County Board conundrum right there.
Thurles Sarsfield were hoping to win 5 county titles in a row, but they were dumped out in the semi-finals at the hands of Nina Era Og yesterday. They lost on a scoreline of 2-18 to 2-15 at Semple Stadium. Meath Hurling, Kiltale came from behind in the final to beat Trim 218-14 to win their 5th title on the trot. In Roscommon, Athleague won their first county title since 2007, beating the favourites 4 Roads by a goal, while in Monaghan football, Scottstown clinched their 4th title in a row, beating Ballybay by 113 to 13 points. That secured the club's 19th county title. Ballygunner claimed the 5th successive Waterford Senior Hurling Championship. They were 218 to 13 winners over Abbeyside. And Offaly Coolderry had 6 points to spare as they won the county title. They defeated Kilcormac Calahi by 217 to 17. While in Laois, Camross were crowned senior hurling champions for the 26th time in their history. It finished at O'Moore Park. Camross 215, Rathdowney Errol 19 points.
Okay, the other thing that we needed to bring in for the weekend was the massive brawl where people went from the field/pitch/octagon into the crowd. This one was in Derry football. No, down football. Of course it's down football. She was Downpatrick. Downpatrick, Ballyholland. The lads vaulting over to
Holy shit.
Holy shit.
Connor's fine. Connor's on the pitch. You can see it.
Connor's fine, don't worry about him. He's fine.
That's the same woman from the Schlock Neal video, is it?
She's just following around.
She just likes going to brawls.
There's a woman in the middle of it trying to break it up. There you go.
Like,
yeah, it'll be over. I'll be over. Look, sure, it's great, isn't it? As long as everyone's alright. Oh my god, it's so good. Yep. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay, people are getting hurt.
Tolerance.
It's like
Kick clubs out.
I think that's it.
Kick them out, it won't happen again.
Yeah.
Because the fact that there's been 3 of those videos in the space of, what, a month?
And that whole team, all underage, all gone for a whole year. The death penalty for a year. And if you're really into it, you'll keep going for that year, and you'll come back in a year's time and you'll go, okay, we're not going to do this again.
Well, of course, that's what they should do. But that's obviously not going to happen. Like, they're not even going to come close. When they actually had the neck to throw out Armagh and Tyrone, wasn't it, in the minor under 21 championship this year in Ulster, that was reversed pretty quickly. But at least they were seen to be doing something for a short period of time. But for that, clearly, somebody's hopped onto SmackDown versus Raw on the PlayStation and selected the car park game mode because it looked like it was going to get into that sort of thing. If the UFC is in danger of turning into that, well, maybe Ulster Club Football could follow suit. Controversy creates cash, Darren.
Yeah, controversy creates cash. That's really dangerous, though. And you hate seeing those scenes because without getting all Maud Flanders on it, won't someone please think of the children? Like, people die around this country with one-punch knockouts.
Yeah.
That's not something that doesn't happen. That's really dangerous.
And these are lads who are doing weights, who, are amped up and who are not taking a backward step. And they're like the stereotype of the management of various teams around the country telling teams to go out, don't take a backward step. They're questioning your manliness, all that bullshit. Like,
but the thing is, some of the scumbags in that video would have felt empowered by the decision on Eden Dork to, refer to it as accidental. Like, maybe it was accidental and maybe there was no more to it. But when they see a decision like that, maybe they kind of heard some of the rumours that were doing the rounds and they look at that and they think to themselves, well, maybe we can get away with this sort of stuff. Maybe if I do something that isn't accidental, it can be referred to as accidental. That's a get-out clause in all of this sort of situation. Well, I'm going to continue to do this because this is what we do. This is Gaelic
obviously
football.
Accidental in that instance. And
it's not a coincidence, though, it's not a coincidence that we've seen 3 of those videos emerge in recent weeks.
No, it really isn't.
People are seeing this, they're copycats, they're emboldened by what they see, and the fact that because of how slow the disciplinary process works, nothing has really happened to anyone responsible for any of those kind of scenes just yet.
No. It's madness. It's madness that no one cares enough to step in and say, we have to stop this. Like, Irish society kind of has a tolerance of violence. If you look at what happens on our streets on a Saturday night, that I thought that maybe that had disappeared, but that's just because I'm not out at night around that time anymore. Like, we belch everybody out onto the streets at the same time. There's not enough public transport. There's not enough in any of the small towns, let alone the cities. And fights happen because people are pissed up, and somehow we accept it there, and we think that it's going to be different when it gets to our sports. Having said that, this doesn't seem to happen in local soccer matches, does it? You don't see these brawls and
not in the same way, because I think they do tend to be a little bit more no nonsense. I think there was a story in England over the weekend where they were trying to bring in the harshest penalties possible for those kind of scenes. Or, like, if you touch a referee, you will be banned for life. So if you physically assault anyone, why not look at stringent bans? Why just stop it at a referee? If you jump a barrier and try to hit someone standing there, fair enough, you might be shouting abuse, but that doesn't give you license to attack someone.
Yeah, like when you say there, when somebody please think of the children, there is like a very serious point in the idea of when do people stop becoming extremely impressionable. I would argue that the answer is kind of never. And like you talk about select sports that they would claim get a hard time. I think it's a perfect weekend after which to be speaking about this, because you see all the fights that took place outside the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas on Saturday night. Like people will say, oh, that was only a select few, but ultimately there are certain sports that gather the select few, and when they see that sort of thing happening there, and you're so inclined to be a scumbag like that, and you see those people getting away with things like that, you can go ahead and do it. And unfortunately, club football has actually kind of fallen to that level now, where there is a string of things where the more this happens, the more it'll happen again, and it'll happen again, and it'll happen again, and the more they get away with it, there's no question that it'll happen again more regularly. So like it is throwing them out of the competition for a year. It is banning them, which is the one step forward that can be taken, but I wouldn't be too confident that that's going to happen. Let's not forget that there's also a culture of omerta here, that the disciplinary process of getting to the bottom of things like that isn't
They'll
exactly
find that
always
evidence
the easiest
inconclusive. They'll find the footage inconclusive. We can't make anyone out.
Just have a death penalty.
Well, that's what I mean. It's the only solution.
But kids are dangerously impressionable. I remember when I was 15 or 16, I should have known better, but I played cornerback for my club, and I was watching these cornerbacks who, at the time, sledging and rough play was new, as the northern style, and northern teams were having success.
You wanted to be ricey.
I wanted to be ricey. I was stepping on people's ankles as soon as I walked behind them. I just stand on the back of their boot and see them jump and see what they do, and I put my hand across their jersey, and I just be a complete pain in the arse.
And would they not punch the head off you?
If they did, then they would be the ones getting booked or sent off. And you just do it because you saw other players doing it that were successful, and you thought, if I go up and grab my man first thing, or if I stand behind him, and like, it's going to put him off.
Did your mentors not kind of go, what the hell are you doing there, Darren?
No, because you don't notice it, particularly when the ball's not in play. If no one's around you, if you're just, being a bit of a shite arser, you can get away with it. And because everyone else at the time was, and some of the most successful teams in the country were doing that stuff, you felt, well, if this is the way to success, I'm going to do it too. You copy the people you see and the people that you admire, and particularly in sport, the people who are doing well.
Well, I think particularly in GAA, because the matches that we see on TV, the ones that everybody watch, are the ones, the inter-county matches at the weekend, and we don't have a coaching system where people are coaches who have 10, 12 years coaching experience, who know exactly how to deal with all that kind of stuff. Like, it's volunteers who are coming and giving up their time, and who might be a little bit reticent to say to somebody else's child, you're being a bit of a thug there, Darren. Maybe you should stop that.
I remember I played in a match. I was second year minor, come to the end of my second year minor, and we were playing in a league match up against Vincent's in Marino, and the lad who'd come on was a corner forward. He's a young fella, and he was quite small as a minor. I'd say he was a first year minor. And I did the usual trick of, trying to stand on the toes just to make it uncomfortable, just grabbing him, trying to make it hard for him. And Mickey Whelan, who was just watching the game, as I walked off the pitch afterwards, the kid, he'd touch it once or twice, but he was nervous, he was kicking wayward, it just completely put him off. As I was walking off, Mickey Whelan called me an effing disgrace.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow. Was it against Vincent's?
It was against Vincent's.
All right, okay.
That should be your new Twitter bio.
Effing disgrace.
Mickey Whelan once called me an effing disgrace, and he was right too.
But he just watched that corner for the whole match.
I've got to play you this video. This is from the T-Mobile Arena. It's apparently Ireland versus Russia fans. This is grim. So,
Stay out of it. Stay out of it. Stay out of it.
That's so depressing.
I hadn't seen that.
The ole, ole, ole.
Yeah, it's like all of the good stuff that people have ever said about Ireland fans is now gone. Like, yeah, we have hooligans. Yes, we will go and beat the shit out of people on the basis of their nationality at an event and rally around the people who are... That's grim.
But it's pretty much the same as trying to copy a cornerback who, as they say, plays on the edge. You just get emboldened when you see someone doing it and getting away with it. And they see a bus being smashed up. They see people pushing and shoving. And they think, yeah, I can act like this. If my hero in real life acts like this and he's a multi-millionaire, why can't I do it?
Eoin couldn't take any more. He had to go. Darren, thanks very much.
Cheers, Ger.
That's pretty much all we've got time for on the show today. We'll be back tomorrow around about 7:45. Off the Ball is back on the radio tonight from 7 p.m. and there's plenty to talk about. Stay tuned, offtheball.com, for more details and rolling analysis of the shitfest that is the world we live in right now. Good luck.
OTB AM. Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre. OTB AM.